Inilah Indonesia, negeri dengan berjuta keragaman yang membawa berjuta harapan. Disinilah tempat berpadunya asa dan cita-cita dari penjuru Nusantara.
Bersama kami berikan kontribusi nyata lewat inovasi, karya cipta, dan pencapaian lain sesuai bidang ilmu. Dari UI, untuk Indonesia yang toleran, unggul, dan bermartabat.
Selamat datang di Universitas Indonesia. Dari masa ke masa, Universitas Indonesia terus tumbuh dan berkarya. Sehingga menjadi salah satu institusi pendidikan yang terbesar, terbaik, dan terdepan di Indonesia dan Asia. Di sini, di Universitas Indonesia, berhimpunlah putra-putri terbaik bangsa. Dari beragam latar belakang, kami bangun sebuah komunitas intelektual yang saling memperkaya hasanah pengetahuan dan nilai kemanusiaan. Untuk mendukung pengembangan generasi yang unggul, Universitas Indonesia menghadirkan fasilitas penunjang studi bertaraf internasional serta mengimplementasikan teknologi tinggi untuk mendukung riset dan perkembangan industri. Kampus Universitas Indonesia juga dapat diakses oleh semua, tak terkecuali penyandang disabilitas. Sebagai komitmen kami dalam mewujudkan pendidikan inklusif, dengan dukungan moda transportasi yang ramah lingkungan dan inisiatif penggunaan sumber energi terbarukan, Universitas Indonesia kian mengokohkan diri menjadi kampus hijau yang mendukung pembangunan berkelanjutan. Universitas Indonesia juga menjalin kemitraan dengan berbagai stakeholder guna menghadirkan kemudahan dan kenyamanan bagi segenap sivitas akademika. Karena setiap insan adalah unik, dengan bakat dan minat yang beragam, Universitas Indonesia membuka peluang sebesar-besarnya bagi tiap individu untuk menggali dan mengembangkan talentanya. Dengan dukungan ragam fasilitas dan unit kegiatan mahasiswa, Universitas Indonesia mendorong semua mahasiswa untuk mewujudkan mimpi dalam prestasi. Bersama, kita rangkul keberagaman menjadi energi untuk masa depan, bagi sesama, bangsa, dan dunia. Universitas Indonesia, rayakan keberagaman. Universitas Indonesia, Veritas, Probitas, Justisia.
perjalananmu, mengarungi alur hidup yang tak menentu. Bersama tunjukkan mahakarya, mengemban nama putra putri bangsa, gelora semangat Nusantara di Universitas Indonesia. Maju bersama kampus merdeka di Universitas Indonesia. UI bangun masa depan bangsa, Indonesia jaya. Kita tuntut ilmu dan berkarya di Universitas Indonesia. Bangun semangat baru di Universitas Indonesia. Maju bersama kampus merdeka di Universitas Indonesia. Bangun masa depan bangsa, Indonesia jaya. Kita tuntut ilmu dan berkarya di Universitas Indonesia. Bangun semangat baru di Universitas Indonesia. Bersama tunjukkan mahakarya, mengemban nama putra putri bangsa, gelora semangat Nusantara di Universitas Indonesia. Bersama tunjukkan mahakarya, mengemban nama putra putri bangsa, gelora semangat Nusantara di Universitas Indonesia. Bersama tunjukkan mahakarya, mengemban nama putra putri bangsa, gelora semangat Nusantara di Universitas Indonesia.
Video ini akan lebih nyaman jika ditonton di komputer, laptop, dan juga di handphone. Tapi jangan lupa di full screen ya. Selamat menonton.
Oh iya, belum bikin video botol BM ya? Bikin sekarang aja deh. Hai teman-teman, selamat datang di Perpustakaan Universitas Indonesia. Perpustakaan Universitas Indonesia terletak di pusat kampus Universitas Indonesia Depok, dekat dengan Fakultas Ilmu Komputer, Gedung Rektorat UI, dan juga dekat dengan Danau Kenanga. Perpustakaan yang kami banggakan ini menyimpan lebih dari 940.000 koleksi dalam bentuk buku teks, e-book, jurnal, karya ilmiah, bahkan naskah dan buku klasik. Seluruh sivitas akademika UI dapat mengakses koleksi tersebut secara gratis. Terdapat 4 lantai yang dapat dimanfaatkan oleh Sivitas Akademika Universitas Indonesia untuk mengakses koleksi perpustakaan. Di lantai 1, kamu bisa membaca koleksi tematis dan karya guru besar UI. Di lantai 2, kamu bisa membaca dan meminjam koleksi buku teks dari berbagai disiplin ilmu dengan durasi peminjaman 2 minggu dan dapat diperpanjang sebanyak 2 kali. Kamu pun dapat membaca koleksi Wiana, yaitu koleksi hasil penelitian mahasiswa sebagai syarat kelulusan. Kamu juga dapat mengakses koleksi khusus, jurnal, dan referensi yang ada di lantai 4. Tak hanya dimanjakan dengan hampir 1 juta koleksi, Sivitas Akademika Universitas Indonesia juga dapat memanfaatkan fasilitas yang begitu lengkap, seperti ruang internet, ruang kubikus, ruang naskah, dan ruang belajar mandiri. Perpustakaan juga menyediakan teknologi untuk mempermudah pembelajaran seperti fasilitas peminjaman mandiri dan juga Uyana Digital Program. Tak lupa perpustakaan memiliki layanan pencegahan plagiarisme. Layanan ini membantu kamu agar karya kamu tidak terdeteksi plagiat. Sesuai Eks-Karektor nomor 208 tahun 2009, plagiarisme adalah tindakan seseorang yang mencuri ide atau pikiran yang telah dituangkan dalam bentuk tertulis dan atau tulisan orang lain dan digunakan dalam tulisannya seolah-olah ide atau tulisan orang lain tersebut adalah ide, pikiran, dan atau tulisan sendiri sehingga merugikan orang lain. Karena mengunggah karya akhirmu menjadi salah satu syarat kelulusan, Perpustakaan UI menyediakan layanan Unggah UIANA, di mana layanan ini membantu menyelesaikan berbagai permasalahan terkait pengunggahan karya akhirmu sesuai pedoman penulisan tugas akhir. Tidak unik jika bukan Perpustakaan UI. Di sini, kamu bisa menemukan bank, coffee shop, dan kantor pos untuk menunjang kegiatanmu juga loh. Nah, itu dia sekilas tentang Perpustakaan Universitas Indonesia. Jangan lupa ya untuk follow Instagram dan Twitter kita di @ui_library. Semoga bermanfaat.
Good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How are you? I hope everyone is in good and healthy condition. Okay, before we start, I would like to ask every participant to use display name and virtual background as the community has shared in the chat room. Please, everyone, change your name and use virtual background as provided by the community in the chat room. Thank you. Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, before we starting this webinar, we will sing our national anthem. Please be ready. We will sing the national anthem, Indonesia Raya.
Jadi
Thank you. We are hoping that this webinar runs smoothly and also beneficial for attendees. So let's begin our webinar by reading a prayer. Prayer start. Prayer finish. Okay, welcome to the International Webinar Salami Slicing in Publication to Support Research Ethics. I am Hanif Inamullah, your moderator for today. All right, before we begin, I would like to greet Professor Dr. Rernat Abdul Haris, Master of Science, Vice Rector of Academic and Student Affairs, Universitas Indonesia, and our honorable speakers, Professor Dr. Abrizah binti Abdullah, Ms. Rahmi, PhD, Ms. Jimena Alvira, MD, PhD, and Mrs. Maria Essos M. Hum as the head of Universitas Indonesia Library. And also, all of the respectable participants of International Webinar Salami Slicing in Publication to Support Research Ethics. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the agenda for today. Okay, the first agenda are the opening remarks from our Vice Rector and the Head of Library. And then we will listen to the presentations from the speakers, which will be followed by a question and answer session. And also there will be a quiz for participants at the end of the session. And after that, we will conclude the webinar and have a photo session. This webinar can also be watched on UI Library's YouTube channel at youtube.com/Perpustakaan UI. All right, everyone, we are now going to listen the opening and welcoming speech delivered by Vice Rector of Academic and Student Affairs, Universitas Indonesia. We would also like to request Vice Rector to open the International Webinar Salami Slicing in Publications to Support Research Ethics. Please welcome Professor Dr. Rernat Abdul Haris, Master of Science.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a good pleasure for me to welcome you to International Webinar hosted by Universitas Indonesia Library. Distinguished speaker, Professor Dr. Abrizah binti Abdullah, Professor in Department of Library Science and Information, Faculty of Art and Social Sciences, University Malaya, from Malaysia, and Ms. Rahmi, PhD, the Assistant Professor in Department Library and Information Science, Universitas Indonesia, and Ms. Jimena Alvira, PhD, Senior Clinical Research Specialist, Elsevier Health, Spain. And moderator webinar, Mr. Hanif Inamullah, MSc, and whom I respect to Mr. and Mrs. Chairman of the Association of Librarian and Academic Libraries in Indonesia, lecturer and student of Universitas Indonesia, head of UI Library, Ibu Maria, UI Library Coordinator and staff, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and international webinar participants. Please be to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for His permission. We all have gathered here today on the occasion in International Webinar Series 3, organized by the University of Indonesia Library, with the theme Salami Slicing in Publication to Support Research Ethics. It's conducted on this Wednesday, October 12, 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, Salami Slicing is publication. Salami is activity to divide research into several research publications. Often the studies are published within the same scope, for example, hypothesis, population, and the methods. Clinical trial data and epidemiological data cannot be published simultaneously. It will be answer different questions so that different conclusion can be drawn. It is valid to describe the important result of the study separately. However, its publication must clearly define the hypothesis, and it will be presented as part of the larger study. Salami slicing is usually used to increase the number of research publications, and it is not an acceptable course of actions, as the same slice should be never published more than once. In addition, salami slicing can also lead to distortions of the literature that makes a reader believe that the data presented in salami slicing, such as journals, come from different samples of the subjects. Ladies and gentlemen, the technological advance have an impact, especially on the academic world, with easier access to information for learning. However, this also have a negative impacts, such as being careless in processing information sources and resulting in violations such as plagiarism. I think this should be our attention. And although currently there are various kinds of software and applications to check similarities, plagiarism should be avoided from the beginning of creating a research. I think we have to avoid duplications. In Indonesia, there are various regulations governing plagiarism. One type of plagiarism is normally frequently often is the self-plagiarism. And we also know salami slicing. The author must pay attention to the limitation in salami slicing in order to avoid double publications. Authors must have research integrity by prioritizing honesty to avoid plagiarisms. Ladies and gentlemen, Universitas or universities or college have a big role in conducting research, whether published in internal repositories or published in the other form like books, journal, and etc. The large number of studies will increase the university's ranking, both on local and also international level. Research also contribute to achieving the goal of SDGs in point 4, namely quality applications. The purpose of this seminar is to gain knowledge and insight on ethics and of salami slicing. Participants also learn to explore more about the role of various stakeholders, such as academic researcher, publisher, and also librarian within the scope of salami slicing. Universitas Indonesia, on behalf of Universitas Indonesia, we fully committed to support all development programs and activities carried in our unit at the Universitas Indonesia to achieve international standard university. We hope that this webinar will provide in-depth knowledge to all participants regarding the role of libraries in ethics of research. We hope that all participants, especially in the Civitas Academica Universitas Indonesia, lecturers, students, and librarians will be active in research and obey the ethic research. We also hope that lecturers, students, and librarians can collaborate with each other to increase the publication research. Ladies and gentlemen, before we can comment with these seminars, we would like to express my sincerely appreciation to all of you who generously help us make this event come together to become a success. We would like to say thank you to all parties, especially to the speaker, moderators, head of library university, coordinator and staff, participant of the webinar, and the committee who have prepared everything so that the third series of international seminar activities can be going well. By saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, the third series international webinar by the theme Salami Slicing in Publication to Support Research Ethics is officially open. Last but not least, I ensure the webinar will be profitable and the next few hours will be enjoyable and fruitful for everybody, for all participants. And thank you very much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Abdul Haris, for the opening speech. Now we are going to listen the brief introduction of the webinar delivered by Head of Universitas Indonesia Library, Mrs. Maria Essos M. Hum. Please welcome Mrs. Maria.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hanif. Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, I can hear clearly.
Okay, thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Very good morning to you all. Welcome to the international webinar. We really appreciate your presence here because in the midst of your busy schedule, you are pleased to take the time and effort to attend the webinar that we organize. Respected Vice Rector for Academic and Student Affairs, Universitas Indonesia, Profesor Dr. Renat Abdul Haris, Master of Science. Distinguished speakers, Profesor Dr. Abrizah binti Abdullah, Professor at the Department of Library and Information Science, the University of Malaya, and currently the Dean of the Institute for Advanced Studies University Malaya from Malaysia. Apa kabarnya, Prof? Semoga selalu sehat. Amin.
Terima kasih.
Ya. Baik, terima kasih, Prof. And Ms. Rahmi PhD, Assistant Professor in Department Library and Information Science, Universitas Indonesia. Terima kasih, Bu Rahmi, sudah berkenan menjadi narasumber kami.
Dengan senang hati, Bu.
Oke, makasih. And Ms. Jimena Alvira, PhD, Senior Clinical and Research Specialist, Elsevier Health from Spain. Hola, buenos días, Ms. Jimena. Okay, and moderator webinar, Mr. Hanif Inamullah, SHUM MSI, lecturer at Department of Library and Information Science, Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Indonesia. And whom I respect to, Chairman of the Association of Librarian and Academic Libraries in Indonesia, lecturers and students of Universitas Indonesia, coordinator and UA library staff, and of course distinguished participants of this international webinar. Praise be to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for His permission. We all have gathered here today for the International Webinar Series number 3 organized by the UI Library with the theme Salami Slicing in Publication to Support Research Ethics, Wednesday, October 12, 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, salami slicing or publication salami is an activity to divide research into several research publications. Universities or colleges have a big role in conducting research, whether published in internal repositories or published in another form like books and journal. In 2022, UI Library held a series of national and international webinars on digital transformation of academic libraries. This main topic includes 10 subtopics for 7 national webinars and 3 international webinars. The topic of third international is salami slicing in publication to support research ethics. This international webinar to gain knowledge and insights on ethics of salami slicing. Also, explore more about role of various stakeholders such as academics, researchers, publishers, and librarians within the scope of salami slicing. We also hope that librarians will be active, collaborating in research. Distinguished guests, today we invite three competent speakers, namely Professor Dr. Abdrizah binti Abdullah from Malaysia. She will be present about ethics fostering responsible research, say no to salami slicing. And Ms. Rahmi PhD from Indonesia, she will be present about salami slicing and the issue of transparency. And Ms. Jimena Alvira PhD, she will be present about rushing to publish the other pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, the target of this activity is the implementation salami slicing based on ethics within the scope of research. The participants of the webinar are library directors or manager, professional organization managers, librarian, archivists, and other library information science professional, student and lecturers, researcher, publisher, and general public. The duration of this webinar is 3 hours 30 minutes. This event is free and participants will get electronic certificates, material, and for the lucky participant will get souvenir from us. Ladies and gentlemen, before I end, I would like to express my gratitude to all parties, especially to the Vice Rector for Academic and Student Affairs at UI, speakers and moderator, UI library partner, participant, the coordinator and staff, the chairman of the committee, Ms. Nurintan, the personnel in charge of the third international webinar series, Ms. Aswina, and all the committees that I cannot mention one by one who have prepared everything so that today's the series of international webinar can run well. We hope this webinar can be carried out well and successful, and also can be listened and add new insight for librarian and information professional in Indonesia and abroad. Thank you very much. Wabillahi taufik walhidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, Om Santi Santi Om, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Mrs. Maria. Okay. Before we going to the main sessions, we will have a photo session first. I would like to invite the Honorable Vice Rector of Academic and Student Affairs Universitas Indonesia, Prof. Abdul Haris, and our honorable speakers, Professor Abrizah, Ms. Rahmi, and Ms. Jimena, and also the head of Universitas Indonesia Library, Mrs. Maria, to take a position because we will start the photo session now. Mr. Hanafi, you may lead the photo session.
Okay. Photo session, I will start. 1, 2, 3. Next. 1, 2, 3. Next. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hanafi. Now we are in the main agenda. As Professor Abdul Haris and Mrs. Maria mentioned before, salami slicing or publication salami is an activity to divide research into several research publications. Often, the studies are published within the same scope. For example, hypothesis, population, and methods. However, each publication must clearly define the hypothesis and it would be presented as part of a larger study. Universities or college have a big role in conducting research, whether it's published in internal repositories or published in the other forms, like books, journal, or etc. The large number of studies will increase the university's ranking both on local and international scale. Research also contributes to achieving the goals of SDGs in point number 4, namely quality education. So, Universitas Indonesia Library hold this webinar to gain knowledge and insight about salami slicing from various stakeholders. All right, at this time, we have 3 speakers to share their knowledge. First of all, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. The first speaker, we have Professor Dr. Abrizah binti Abdullah. Professor Abrizah is a professor at Department of Library and Information Science, Faculty of Arts and Social Science, University of Malaya from Malaysia. She graduated with a bachelor degree in environmental engineering from Temple University, Philadelphia, and obtained her master's and PhD degree both in library and information science from UM. She is an active researcher heading her own research group in scholarly communications. She is a senior academic associate at Cyber Research Limited at the UK and is currently a principal investigator in an international research funded by the Alfred Sloan Foundation that investigates the scholarly communication behaviors of early career researchers during the pandemic involving 8 countries, including China, France, Malaysia, Poland, Russia, Spain, UK, and the USA. Her research interests focus on digital library, information behavior, scholarly communication, and bibliometrics. Professor Abrizah is the chief editor of the Malaysian Journal of Library and Information Science. She is an active author, international advisory board member, and reviewer of impact factor journals in the area of library and information science. She is currently the Dean of the Institute for Advanced Studies, University of Malaya, and was the Dean of the Faculty of Computer Science and Information Technology University. And for the second speaker, join with us today, Ms. Rahmi, PhD. She is an assistant professor, a civil servant under the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology in the Department of Library and Information Science, Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Indonesia. Her research focuses on human-centered aspects of information behavior, include disaster-related human information behavior, corporal or embodied information, quantitative analysis, computational social science, documentation studies, and crisis informatics. She received her master's and PhD degrees from Graduate School of Library, Information and Media Studies, University of Tsukuba, Japan in 2015 and 2019. Dr. Rahmi is the youngest LIS doctorate in Indonesia, where she graduated from the doctoral program at the age of 27. She is now the chair of Kappa Sigma Kappa Indonesia and also appointed as the head of Synergy Alignment and University Ranking Management at Transformation Risk Management Monitoring Evaluation Bureau at Universitas Indonesia. And the last speakers, we have Ms. Jimena Alvira, MD, PhD. She is a senior clinical and research manager for Elsevier Health Solutions. She is an enthusiastic and passionate medical doctor and doctor of neuroscience with broad experience in clinical practice. After obtaining her degree, she worked as postdoctoral research fellow in the Hospital 12 de Octubre, Madrid, where she focused on the study of the neuroanatomical mechanism underlying psychiatric and neurodegenerative disorder. Her passion for science communication and the dissemination of knowledge kickstarted her career as medical writer, which is still ongoing. To date, she has edited numerous scientific articles for publication in peer-reviewed journals and delivered multiple scientific writing masterclasses and workshops around the world. She joined Elsevier since 2012 as knowledge representation expert and working with Elsevier's Spanish team to launch Clinical Key for the Spanish-speaking market. All right, everyone, before we start and listen to our speakers, I would like to remind all of the participants to please keep your microphone off during the webinar session. If you have any questions or comments, please submit your questions to the Slido link, which will be sent by the committee in the chat box. And also don't forget to mention your name and institution, because 3 selected Q&A participants will get exclusive souvenir from UI Library. All right, so let's begin our session today. For the first speaker, I would like to invite Professor Abriza to start our session. Your time is 40 minutes. Professor Abriza, please welcome.
Thank you very much, Bapak Hanif Innamullah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alhamdulillah, first of all, I would like to extend my thank you, appreciation to the organizer of this webinar, International Webinar, Ibu Maria. And also salam perkenalan, yeah, from Malaysia, from University of Malaya to Universitas Indonesia. Okay, we are strategic partners actually, yeah, when it comes to research performance, yeah, in the area in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So before I start, I would like to also acknowledge, okay, the presence of the Vice Rector, Universitas Indonesia, and also 2 colleagues that I know today, our distinguished speakers, Dr. Rahmi, yeah, Dr. Rahmi, and also Dr. Alvira. I have been given the responsibility or the task to actually touch on salami slicing in the context of ethics. Yeah, so basically on the context of ethics, and what can we actually do about it? And how do we address or inhibit salami practices? Okay, so all right, let me. Okay, all right. I wonder if the viewers can see my slide that I have shared now. Can you all see my slide?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The problem is that I cannot make it a slideshow. I wonder why. Okay, all right, it's okay. So when Ibu Maria approached me, inviting me to talk about salami slicing, I have no hesitation at all, although I have actually no experience professionally to talk about this particular topic, okay? Because I would say that salami slicing, based on my previous research, when we talk about ethics and integrity in publication, where a particular paper has problems and being withdrawn or retracted from journal, it is not very frequent. I would say that it is not common for us to identify that the paper relates to salami slicing and why it is being retracted. So I would say that it is not easy actually for us to identify a particular paper, whether the paper is or the author is practicing salami slicing. Okay, so in the context of this, because for us, and this has also been stressed by the Vice Rector just now, and also by Ibu Maria, again by Bapak Hanif, yeah, in the context of salami slicing and why it is not acceptable practice, and because it can always relate to, incorrect way of giving merit to a researcher or a group of authors, and perhaps, okay, because the number of publications and the number of citations contribute very much in the ranking of universities, especially when we at the Southeast Asian region nowadays are very, very, placing importance on research assessment through ranking and through citations and also publications. So it might actually give an incorrect picture, of a particular performance of researcher, and there has been said about three kind of lies, bad lies, damn lies, statistics, and now people are contributing one more lies in it. It is in the terms of university ranking, because of this kind of malpractices that actually contribute to why certain, performance actually not being measured well. If ethics and integrity is not being encountered into research performance or assessment. So in this context, okay, now I have problem actually to share my slide.
Professor
Yeah.
Abriza, should we present by the committee?
Yeah, can you please do so, because suddenly it's static. I do not know
Okay,
why. So I
please.
unshare this. Okay, and I hope
Okay, thank you.
Aswina, or yeah, I'm so sorry about that. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so in the context of this webinar, what I'm going to share is actually how to apply our understanding of publication ethics, in one category of publication violation, that is salami slicing. And the organizer has mentioned that it is a form of self-plagiarism, which I agree. So basically, I will describe what is salami slicing, reinforcing what has been mentioned by Ibu Maria, by the Vice Rector just now, and also by our moderator. What forms does it comes in, and how actually can we prevent salami slicing? Okay, so I will also share what are some of the, the harms, the harms of salami and the benefits of doing unsliced research, right? So later on, the viewers can actually do an assessment of what I have presented, whether salami is actually an unethical practice or it is just an ethical dilemma. Okay, because what I'm going to emphasize here, and this is also emphasized in science, that authors or researchers should owe the responsibility to preserve the truth about their publication to various stakeholders. So I hope what I'm going to share here will benefit early career researchers and mid-career researchers as they seek to publish or they want to publish in impact-factor journals for the first time. Okay, all right. So next slide, please. Okay, I have put forward that, and we know that, it is not just about publish and perish, but perish if you do not publish ethically. So I'm putting the notion here that we as researchers, as authors, we do not only publish, but we need to publish ethically, because this is very important to the stakeholders that we serve. It is not just to us, to the stakeholders that read our publication, to the stakeholders, especially the libraries, that needs to preserve the truth of what the research is all about. Because we know that journals nowadays, although there has been a very good movement in terms of open science, advocating open access to journal publication, but still journals are still very, very expensive to be subscribed. So libraries will think of various ways to accommodate access and also preservation of the publication or the research publication of the researchers, in not only in a form of subscription, but also archiving through institutional repositories. And the libraries has the obligation to make sure that the research coming out from the institution, from the researchers, are in fact correct, truthful. So research is not complete until it is published. And for researchers, publishing your research is morally right. So there is no way that nowadays, if you have published, if you have secured research funding, you have to you have the obligation to communicate your research, through various avenues. such as publication, such as preprint, such as doing outreach, such as talking about your research in a form of engagement and presenting, such as in seminar or webinar. All right. So when we talk about publishing, what the libraries want to make sure that all the stakeholders that read your research is that the research must be in a form of detailed and permanent record. Okay, so libraries have the obligation in terms of making sure that the record of the research, the record of science of the researchers, okay, are being permanently there, available in repositories or in subscription database, for example. Yeah, all right. And the work is conducted and reported honestly, objectively, and fairly. But somehow, all right, this is just an ideal, and deviations from this ideal normally occurs. All right, somehow researchers or authors, okay, do not know, are ignorant about the ethical issues in research publishing, and sometimes, okay, if they are not fully informed, if they are not being trained well, right? So the ethical breaches can be intentional or can be just simply out of ignorance because they do not know. Okay? So it's very important for a researcher or a scientist to develop a strong sense of ethical responsibility and apply it at every stage of the scientific inquiry, every stage of the scientific process, be it from formulation of the research objective to data collection, for example, analysis, and later on, all right, from publishing. Yeah. Okay. All right. So next slide, please. All right, so I've been talking just now that, okay, researchers should owe the truth about their publication. Okay, to who? To these 6 main stakeholders, all right? And the reason why I have also indicated here. Okay, so as authors or researchers, you should owe the truth about your publication, okay, to the public, to the institution that fund your research. Yeah, because this comes from the taxpayers' money. Yeah, very often, right? To the research participants, to your colleagues, to your collaborators who read your research later on, who will have the tendency to cite your research, especially to the universities, to the employer, because the employment, the resources, and the reputation of the university or your organization will be affected if, let's say, there is problem about your publication later on, all right? And I believe, okay, because the viewers here are mainly librarians, yeah, I would say academic librarians, all right, who, like what I mentioned just now, I stressed just now that libraries, academic libraries must preserve the truth about the research, okay, coming from your organizations, all right. So researchers have the obligation that, okay, to also protect, their research, okay, as a pursuit of truth and knowledge, because what we want to emphasize here is that your research publication or the papers are actually meant to advance science, okay, not to advance your career. Yeah, we understand that, okay, in various nowadays in universities, okay, publications, especially publications in peer-reviewed or impact-factored journals, they are being used as a merit to build reputation, all right, of researchers. So this is very much acknowledged, all right. However, it is very important for researchers to understand that, okay, the research coming out from the publications coming out from your research should advance science, not just only to advance your career. Okay, so this is why we need to owe the truth about our publication, make sure that the research stays as it is for a long time. It will not have problem until people talk about it, until it is being withdrawn from the scientific literature, until it becomes retracted from journals. Yeah. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So publication integrity. Okay, so like what I mentioned just now, we have the responsibility to ensure that our publication are honest, clear, accurate, complete, balanced, avoid misleading or selective or ambiguous reporting. Not only the researchers, but of course the other scientific community who contribute actually in strengthening a particular publications, especially the journal editors and also peer reviewers. They also work hard, all right, to ensure whatever is being written in a particular article, all right, is ethically sound. Yeah. Okay. So publishers also, journals publishers also, right, have the responsibilities to ensure that the integrity of the research literature, and very often nowadays, okay, as part of determining the trustworthiness and the authority of a journal is that journals should list down, okay, all these publication ethics guidelines in their website. All right. Okay. Next. So I would bring you to responsible research. Okay, because responsible research is being very much emphasized nowadays as part of research assessment. Yeah, I foresee that there will be an indicator later on. Perhaps Dr. Alvira can also highlight this, whether Elsevier is going to do this or not. But determining, okay, the responsible research as an indicator in research assessment, or perhaps, okay, in the indicator of to measure the soundness, okay, of a particular publication or even a journal. All right. So responsible research is the ability to produce ethically acceptable, sustainable, and socially desirable research outcome for the public. Okay. In the end, we want the public to actually benefit from your research. All right. Through publications. Yeah. So it is about understanding how to conduct research and also publish it in accordance with contemporary good practice. So this is responsible research, and it is being manifested through publications, right? So whatever form of the publication, it is something that is in accordance with the contemporary good practice. Nowadays, as we are going for transparency and openness, I believe Dr. Rahmi is going to touch on that as well, right? It is very encouraging to actually share publication very much earlier, in the form of preprint, for example, just to make sure that the paper is being disseminated well, all right, not only to those who can have access to journals. Yeah, so this is responsible research, and I'm going to put into the context of salami slicing or salami publishing in responsible research. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So I have listed here, this is based on literature and also based on, an earlier study that I did in 2018 on the publication violations that can actually threaten, okay, the integrity of science, that can actually lead to papers being pulled from the literature, being retracted, all right? And in the end, it can actually, affect the standing of a researcher or a group of researchers in the scientific community. Okay, examples such as authorship dispute. I'm not going to touch on this. I'm going to touch only on the red one. Okay, that is the focus of our webinar here. Conflict of interest. We know that nowadays there have been issues about fake peer review, yeah, plagiarism or even self-plagiarism, duplicate submissions or simultaneous submissions, research fraud in terms of fabrication of data, falsification of data, and, okay, salami publication, all right, or segmented publication. Okay, so yes, let us take a closer look at salami publication. Next slide. Okay, so this is definition from the law. Yeah, so it actually originates, it is not just a practice that in scholarly publishing or scholarly communication, it originates, okay, from the act of stealing money from an organization. This is actually defined, you can find this in Longman or any other, general dictionary, that salami slicing is an illegal act of stealing money. Okay, so a person steals money from an organization using the computer, remove small amounts of the money over a period of time. So it is being done slowly over a period of time. All right. So it is an act of removing or reducing something by doing it very slowly, gradually. People do not realize what is happening. Okay, so it is an illegal act. It is about stealing money. All right. So this is the definition from the law. All right. So let's take a look at salami slicing definition from science, okay, from the aspect of science, which has been highlighted just now by Ibu Maria just now. All right, look at the definition. Next slide, please. Okay, so in scholarly publishing, it is about segmenting, cutting your research findings from a bigger paper, okay, a larger study, and you report it, okay, in smaller number of publication. It can be in the form of, very often it is in the form of journal articles. All right. So this is the practice of fragmenting, cutting, segmenting single coherent studies of research into as many publications as possible. Yeah. So it is about breaking a single paper into least publishable units, or people call it pablon, with each paper reporting different findings from the same study. So this is the working definition of salami slicing. However, when we talk about identifying whether it is being put on practice, ideally it is the definition is this. Okay, let's take a look at the next slide. All right. Next slide, please. Okay, practically, all right, salami slicing occurs when? Okay, so it is done by the same group of authors. The same group of authors. Okay, this particular group of authors publish one paper, all right, and the same authors, using the same data or similar data, produce additional publications about the same subject, okay, with the objective of being to increase the number of publications. So how can we know this intention while reading the article? Okay, so as a reviewer or other people who read, definitely we don't know the intention of the authors, whether the authors want to increase the number of publications or not. But definitely, okay, only the authors know this. All right, so we do not want at the end people know about this only after the papers have been published. And we have seen that even maybe Dr. Alvira might attest this. Okay, what actually happened to various number of publications that are being retracted even after years of it being published. Yeah. Okay. So what salami slicing does is that, okay, the contribution is very marginal. All right, there's not much contribution in the paper that is being salami sliced. Yeah. Okay. So when one want to identify from reading a paper whether the paper is part of a larger study or not, and if the author does not transparent or openly identify that that is a part of a larger study, what the authors can do is nowadays, what the readers can do is just nowadays, okay, you just identify it, you just search about it, okay, and Google is now wonderful, all right, because it can retrieve full text, and it can also lead you to papers that are related about the subject. All right, about the paper that is being salami sliced. Yeah. So in general, how can we practically identify that a paper is being salami sliced? The paper covers the same population, the same method, and the same research question. Okay. So would you be able to identify whether this is salami or not? All right. So you will perhaps this need to be discussed later on, during Q&A, whether it's easy or not for us to detect an article is being salami sliced or not. Okay, at the point of reading. Yeah. Okay. So practically, salami slicing occurs because the intention of the author is actually to increase the number of publications, and it is not about the quality of the work. Yeah. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. Okay, so just a statement here that authors should not slice one article into several very similar articles in order to get a longer publication list. So it is basically an unacceptable behavior. Okay, you have the hypothesis population method, all the same, research method is the same, but you slice it, okay, to present as if, okay, it comes from different studies. Yeah, the authors or the researchers present it in the form of various papers, and in such a way that it comes from different studies, right? Okay, so that is a way actually to address these issues. But however, very often researchers, very often, this is what the literature say, very often researchers who practice salami publication think of publishing after the research is done. is not very much earlier in the research process. Okay, so this is one way that is not good. All right, it is not a good practice in science. Yeah, okay, you plan to publish the paper only after the project is completed, and you start planning, to publish it, right, in the form of many papers. Yeah, so okay, next slide, please. All right, I'm just giving you one example. I'm not saying that this research or these papers are all salami sliced. Okay, I'm not saying that. All right, I'm just showing one example, and you viewers might be able to think about it. All right, perhaps if you have time, you can look at these papers, and you might want to, learn or perhaps do a little bit of assessment whether these papers are actually salami sliced. Okay, this is an example. 33 papers come up from one study, and the study is a bigger study, all right, at the national level, at the country level, all right, looking at the mental health status in a particular population aged 15 between a particular duration, between 1999 and 2015. And 33 papers come out from this particular study. All right, so 32 papers come out from the first paper. And the paper, each of the paper report, okay, the findings for a particular region, all right, for a particular region. All right, so I'm asking you, you might want to think about it. All right, if let's say, okay, I do a study, I conducted a study, let's say about the impact of COVID-19 vaccines to Malaysian or to Indonesian population, to the Indonesian population or to the Malaysian population. All right, that is a larger study, the impact of COVID-19 vaccine. Yeah, and then you publish another paper. Okay, for example, I publish another paper, the impact of COVID-19 vaccine for this particular population, okay, Malaysian population in, let's say, a particular state, in Johor. I have one in Sabah, one in Sarawak, one in Pahang, one in Terengganu. So I can produce as many as 15 publications from a national study on the impact of COVID-19. All right. So what do you think about it? Is it a salami slice? Is it worth or not to publish, okay, to spend time, all right, publishing a study that actually can be generalized? There is no issue about, about COVID-19 vaccine in relation to region. Okay, that the literature does not say that. All right. So is it worth or not, okay, to spend the public money, their research grant, spend time actually to publish such papers, and to have people, spending time to review your papers, and to have journal editors to spend time, the journal editorial board, for example, all right, to spend time to prepare your papers for publication. So this is something that is, to me, it is actually, something that needs further exploration, all right, because only the authors or the group of authors know the intent of publishing, of slicing the papers into smaller publishable units. Yeah. Okay, next slide, please. All right. I put this in the title, say no to salami slicing. All right. So I have identified about 8 reasons why we as researchers, we should not practice the salami slicing, as authors. All right. First of all, because it is just an unacceptable practice. Okay, because it cannot be easily detected, because we do not know the intention of the authors to communicate, okay, that many papers, all right, to the readers. Okay, whether it is unethical or not, literature has highlighted it as part of publication violation. Okay, similar like plagiarism or self-plagiarism or duplicate submissions. All right, so the literature has identified it as an unethical practice. Okay, whether it is an unethical or not, it is actually still open to the discussion. Okay, so one reason why we should say no to salami slicing is because it can actually enlarge the number of one's author's work. Okay, artificially increase. Okay, it does not, meaning that the publications that come, okay, from a group of researchers, from a researcher, or from a university, for example, or from a country, for example. All right, it is being artificially enlarged. It does not come from the naturalistic inquiry from research, right? So if it is, it is not true. Yeah, if it is not true, it is artificially increased, and it is not true. Definitely, it will give benefits, undeserved benefits, to those authors that publish the articles. All right, give undeserved benefits to authors in career advancement. Perhaps, okay, if citations are there, yeah, increase, it will also give undeserved, impact to a particular journal, for example. All right. So if you think it in a larger sense, for example, all right, that, well, when we talk about even now when we talk about citations, for example, it may inflate author citations. All right, it may inflate self citations as well. Yeah, because when you do salami publication, all right. So one of the practice that is being emphasized is that you also have to cite your previous studies. Okay, so what happened? Okay, if you write a paper about your particular region, yeah, about, let's say, the impact of a COVID-19 vaccine just now. For example, I report it in the context of Johor. Okay, so I have published, okay, in the context of other states, for example. So I will also artificially inflate my self-citations. All right, self-citations. Although the practice is that for you to actually refer to your work that have been published. Okay, so it's not just about undeserving benefits to the researchers, to the authors, but it also a waste of time of readers, a waste of time of the reviewers, a waste of time of the editors. Yeah, waste of time. All right, you are reading, you are reviewing, you are spending time. You are abusing, I would say, especially the reviewer time, because these are all people from the scientific community who actually contribute, volunteer their free time, okay, to give a proper review, all right, for your article so that it will be published. So if, let's say, you are not being transparent, a researcher is not being transparent in, referring to earlier publications that have been published, and the reviewer also do not have that much time to do investigative work, really, to really look at what are the references that you use. All right, it will also be it is if the reviewers also are not trained to do that, I would say, okay, it will actually affect actually the quality of the publication. So that's why we have actually seen that, okay, salami slicing is actually very much being accepted in journals that are of lower rank. All right, so journals that have very good impact factor, journals that are being reviewed, okay, by prolific researchers in the field, will definitely know, okay, on how to actually look at, how to actually review, okay, the paper properly. All right, because they have been trained, they have the experience. Yeah, all right, okay. Also, not about abuse of the time of the people that take care of the article, but it also abuse the space for publication. All right, there are so many other studies that are worth to be published. Yeah, so so that's why this particular practice should be deterred, should not be encouraged. All right, because journals are expensive, and you are taking a lot of space, okay, for publications. All right, if the journal editors or the journal reviewers are not do not really look into the quality of the paper, just publish the paper for the sake of getting publications. Yeah, okay, so you have to be very, very careful of that. All right, and of course, okay, readers might not hold firmly the significance of the work if the work is being reported in various papers. Yeah. Okay, and also especially in the medical and health sciences, evidence-based practices, even in library information science, right? Researchers do a lot of meta-analysis or systematic review. Okay, and if the authors or the research who do this, okay, systematic review, do not have a proper inclusive or exclusive criteria, there is a possibility that these papers are also reviewed. Okay, the Salami papers, for example, are being reviewed. All right, and it can significantly distort the final outcome of the systematic review. Yeah. Okay. So 8 reasons why you should say no to salami slicing. Okay. Next, please. Yeah. Okay. All right. However, it is perceived as a serious matter when authors fail to reference previous publication. Okay, so it is a serious matter if the authors fail to refer to their previous publication. However, it is not a less serious issue if the prior work was appropriately referenced. All right, let me illustrate some findings. Okay, so the tips is that, the technique is that, okay, it will be a lesser serious matter when subsequent papers, okay, refer to the first publication about that particular research, right? So in this case, the authors, the researchers have to be very, very open, very transparent when reporting or when writing the publication. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is a study conducted, okay, on the editorial board members and reviewers, okay, of a particular journal. Yeah, the journal is Advances in Health Science Education, and out of the 24 participants that were included in the study, okay, the study actually looked at salami slicing and plagiarism. So what I have here is just the findings on salami slicing. All right. If you look, okay, at how the participants, okay, or the reviewers, all right, rate the seriousness of salami slicing, you can see here that, okay, the reviewers will be more relaxed, or the editorial board members will be more relaxed, okay, if the data set is new and the authors have referenced, okay, the paper, the previous paper in the current paper. So it's just a matter of reviewers will just caution the author. Okay, all right. Seems that, okay, this paper is part of a larger study. However, the author has actually reviewed the previous paper in the current paper. So it's just a matter of highlighting that in the review. So there is no tendency that the paper will be rejected or blacklisted or asked for retraction. No. Okay. So if let's say although the overall idea of the research question is similar, the methodology is similar, but the data set is new and the authors have referenced their previous work in the paper, so it is less serious. Okay, all right. So if the authors have not referenced their previous work in the current paper, that is very, very serious, to the point that, okay, it will be retracted, or the reviewer or perhaps future readers will identified as a paper that is salami, that it can be retracted. Okay, so meaning that you use the same methodology, same ideas, data set is new but no reference to the previous work, then it is serious. Okay, let's take a look at the third line here. Data set is the same but the research question is new, authors have referenced their previous work, so less serious there, isn't it? To the point that there is a possibility, but very low percentage or very low, chance that the paper will be rejected. Okay, and if the data set is the same, okay, research question is new, authors have not referenced their previous work, then there is a very high tendency that, okay, the paper will be rejected, 57.1%. Maybe the authors will be blacklisted, or maybe if the paper is published, all right, perhaps some whistleblower will report that to the journal editor, for example, to the publisher, then tendency for it to be retracted is also there, however it is slim. Yeah. Okay, so this is considered the rating of seriousness for Salami publication, which actually, if you read the paper, it is less serious actually. And there are ways actually on how to handle Salami slicing. All right, the authors can actually learn on how to tackle this. All right, when writing, but it needs to be properly communicated, or perhaps librarians can actually conduct training session in relation to how to actually tackle, all right, Salami slicing. Next slide, please. I have another less than 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm sharing here a study on the analysis of Malaysian retracted papers, whether it is misconduct or mistake. This is a small study only done for Malaysia. Perhaps colleagues from Indonesia might want to do this for Indonesian. And from the 125 papers that are published in the Web of Science and Scopus, all right, since the first publication, Malaysian publication in Web of Science and Scopus, there are 125 papers that are being retracted. Okay, that was before 2018. All right. When we analyze, when we analyze in terms of who the authors are, yes, the authors are all, for the 125 papers, Malaysian-based researchers. Okay, they are actually the corresponding author. Okay, which actually imply that Malaysian-based authors are responsible. Okay, for the number of retraction by of Malaysian papers. Right? However, when we analyze the reasons for retraction, none of the reasons highlighted by the journal publisher actually relates to Salami. Okay, so this is why I said it is not easy actually to get papers that are retracted because of Salami, because it is difficult to detect. All right. So when a particular research has been published for a long time, then you will actually see. Okay, maybe after 2-3 years and a lot of papers originate, or coming out from the main study, then you can actually see, all right, whether the paper is Salami sliced or not. Okay, so at this point, what I have shared is actually, even nothing mentioned about Salami here as the reason for retraction. Basically, is a violation of publication principle, duplicate, plagiarism, self-plagiarism, which might be Salami, but it is being categorized as self-plagiarism. Yeah. So I have reasons to believe that because it is not easy to detect the intention of the authors on why they publish a lot, right, from the major study, from the main study. Okay, next. Next, please. Okay, so what is acceptable? An acceptable practice is to be transparent, to openly declare that findings, of the different parts of the single study, have been used to create separate papers, and you have to do cross-referencing. All right, and nowadays, because journal editors also go for transparency and openness during review. Very often, you also share data, together when you submit the paper, all the supplementary materials when you submit the paper for review, or you might archive it in a particular repository so that the data is open, is easier for the reviewer to actually check your data, and also any paper that have been published previously in relation to the article, to the current article, although it is not being cited, it has to be detailed down, in the cover letter to the editor. So that is actually an acceptable practice, is actually a good practice for the authors to be more open, more transparent. All right. Okay, next.
I'm sorry, Professor Abriza. I think your time is up.
Yes.
And I think you can. We can give you another 2 minutes to summarize your to conclude your presentation.
Yes, thank you. Just a few more slides. All right. In the next few slides, I have some examples from my current paper that I use a statement to actually relate to how you actually can cross-reference, Okay, from the first paper to the next paper. All right. So this is what we call as sequential publishing. It's not salami. It's not easy to detect salami like what I said. So when I publish the first paper, okay, you say that the findings will be systematically reported in a series of articles once the data analysis is completed. So you put a signpost there in your very first article. Okay. Second, next slide, please. The second paper say this paper is a companion paper to the recent published paper. So you do cross-referencing, all right? And then you look at the way I put it there. Taken together, the two papers provide a rounded picture of this, right? And then the third paper, third paper. Okay, so in this third paper, we see that we have already published 2 articles, this and that. You see, how do actually relate, all right? So the readers can read the articles together, all right, and perform, okay, a thorough, all right, a thorough interpretation of how the papers can be of significance, okay, to the particular bigger research, all right. So, okay, so in the next 2 slides, I have here some tips. What is okay, what is not okay, you can read that, all right, yeah. So, the benefits and also some tips. The tips are very important. The second last slide, the tips. Yes, these are the tips for early career researchers. All right, we know that early career researchers, they want to establish their reputation, yeah, the impact of their paper. They publish a lot nowadays, but you have to make sure that sometimes, okay, when you publish a lot and you publish papers that are not significant, all right, and papers that can lead to self-plagiarism or even salami publishing, yeah, it will create an ethical dilemma, all right? Very often, for me, my experience as journal editor, as also peer reviewer, we can see that very often this kind of paper can be an outright reject. So very often it does not go to peer reviewer. The editors will say, I believe this is part of a larger study. However, okay, this particular contribution is not significant for the audience that the journal serves, right? So very often, it is an outright reject for salami publishing. Okay, so these are some 6 tips for early career researchers. And I would like to end my slide with this, with my presentation that, okay, good science should not lead to publication. Good science should not lead to publication. Okay, yeah, good science should lead to publication. Yeah, sorry, but it not the other way around. All right, so you strategize very much early. You don't think of where to publish only after the research is already completed. All right. So thank you very much, Brother Hanif, okay, for moderating this session. Inshallah, if there are any questions, I can address this later on. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Abriza. That was a very insightful and informative presentation about ethical perspective of salami slicing. But because the time limit, we have to stop your discussion. And maybe if you have any other comment about this discussion, you can add it later after the session finish. And I note that based on your presentation, that salami practice or salami slicing practice is considered as unpleasant and unacceptable research activity, because author should not slice one article up into several very similar articles in order to get longer publication lists. Also, we can see the intention of the authors, but apparently this practice sometimes done because of the researchers' ignorance or intentional. So researchers have the obligation to learn and understand the policy and its ethical aspect. And also, Professor Abriza question about the worthiness of separating research data and results and spend the government and organization money and reviewer and reader time to do this kind of practice. One final sentence that I noted from Professor Abriza is that research is not complete until it is published completely, but not just being published completely, but published ethically. Thank you. Dear participants, if you have any comment or questions about the topic presented by Professor Abriza, You can write it in the Slido link, and I will read the question at the Q&A session after all the speakers presenting their materials. All right, everyone. Once again, thank you for Professor Abriza for your presentation. And for the next presentation, we have Ms. Rahmi. Please be ready. Your time is 40 minutes. Please welcome Ms. Rahmi.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Hanif. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good day, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all in the good and health condition. First of all, I would like to thank to the distinguished Vice Rector, Professor Haris, and also the head of the Universitas Indonesia Library, Ibu Maria, and also my friend who invited me to this event and the committee that have prepared this event, and also the distinguished speakers, Professor Abriza, Dr. Simena, and also the moderator, Mr. Hanif, and all participants. As the end of the Professor Abriza slides, I'm here right now as the representative of the early career researchers and also educators, and I'm here to learning from all of you. So please, if there is any redundant material from previous speakers, please forgive me first. So I will share my slides. And on these very occasions, allow me to discuss several aspects related to the salami slicing and the issue of transparency. So here are the contents, and I don't want to emphasize the ranking system and also the salami slicing because it will take one course to explain the university's ranking system. But if you ask, I will answer later on. So the first introductions. We want to know about the problem, but from the previous slides of the Professor Abriza, she mentions about the retraction journals or retractions papers, but all of you can access about the retraction database through the retractiondatabase.org. So retraction database is a site that reports on retractions of scientific papers on related topics. And a retraction is a mechanism for correcting the literature and alerting readers to publications that contain such seriously flawed or error data that their findings and conclusions cannot be relied upon. And unreliable data may result from honest errors or from research misconduct. When you browse the site, actually how many scientific articles were retracted from Indonesia. So maybe you can access through the website first, but I will show you the results of my findings this night. I made an access through this website on 11 October. So from the website, we know that the 116 items found regarding retractions and other notice. And you can see all of them is from the duplications of image, plagiarism of text, and error in text, duplications of article, and etc. But I cannot mention the authors because it hasn't been disclosed to the authors. So out of my curiosity, so my friend Mbak Aswin asked me to speak about is there any salami slicing from Indonesia? And then what about the relationship between the salami slicing and also the library and information science research? So I am searching through the website of Scopus, and out of my curiosity, I asked these two questions about the request that Mbak Aswin asked me to encounter and explain to you today. So the first questions. The first questions I downloaded about the 96 documents when searching the term salami slicing on Scopus, and I'll analyze it through FOSS-Viewer with the co-authorship and a minimum number of documents of a country. So it seems that there is no article discussing salami slicing from Indonesia in international papers. I also thought that, wow, it seems like a new term in Indonesia, and all of the students, all of the Civitas Academia in Universitas Indonesia should know about the salami slicing. And for the second questions, is there's any connections or relationship between the salami slicing and also LIS research, library and information science research? I analyze it through the bibliometric with co-occurrence all keywords with 3 occurrence minimum of the keywords. But here, as you can observe from the slides, that there is no mentions about the library or even information. So if you look at the following visualizations, it is more directed to research publications, practice guidelines, ethics, and others. So right now, what I can tell you one by one, so where should we start? And the first thing that I want to explain to you first is about the history of the why there is a salami slicing. And Professor Abriza also mentioned about the coin term almost the early of 20th century that say publish or perish. So the term about the publish and perish, sorry, it's not a new term, but we live and also our carriers live with this term, publish or perish. So the first term coined in the United States and later on in the other countries by the publish or perish philosophy, whose effects are increasingly controversial. So I thought that unethical practices such as duplicate papers, salami publications are deeply rooted in the competitive of publish or perish academic environment that incentive quantity over the quality. So this is also said that publication, rightly or wrongly, has become an increasingly important metric or maybe currency of research performance that incentivizes quantity over quality. So for justify by any means, where is the integrity of the academics? It was all started in 1969 with Franz Ingelfinger. I don't know how to spell it, but he is the editor of the England Journal of Medicine, coined the Ingelfinger rule, which proclaimed that a manuscript can be considered for publications only if its substance has not been submitted or reported elsewhere. So about the Ingelfinger rule, this led me to questions about our integrity as academics. Integrity versus plagiarism. So honesty and integrity are important attributes for all professionals in all practices. And these values also apply when writing publications. However, one particularly odious task that every journal editor, editor-in-chief, editor in general must confront from time to time is the investigations of a case of scientific fraud, which is plagiarism. So plagiarism is defined as using someone else's words, ideas, or results without attribution, which means without attribution, it can be like we do not cite the paper related to the someone else's words or ideas or maybe the results itself. So plagiarism may be an intentional or unintentional act. New and inexperienced writers might be susceptible to plagiarism. So plagiarism can occur in 2 forms. The first one is self-plagiarism, and the second one is salami slicing. So self-plagiarism is when the author reuse portions of their own previous writing in a subsequent paper, for example, redundant and duplicate publications. But for salami slicing, it's about the dividing reports of the outcome of a research project into as many papers as possible in order to maximize the number of potential scientific publications. All participants can access all of the guidelines about the Committee on Publication Ethics World Wide Web And also in the whole area of the disciplinary, it's called COP, Committee on Public Ethics. You can access through this website. So about the salami slicing. What is salami slicing then? Maybe previous speakers also already explained about the salami slicing, but I will repeat it again. It started on the 1999 when the new case law about the biotechnology firm described the implications. So the judge itself, his name is Lowry, seems to creating a doctrine for gene jockey, cases which permit one to slice the salami thinly, allowing patent protections for almost every new biopharmaceutical meeting very low standards of novelty and non-obviousness, but at the same time offering defensible patents on very slightly altered products. So this is the paper, comes from Ben and Sanders Cook, and also written again by Rasmussen on 2013. So I'm really not sure about the term salami slicing originated in the publishing world, but I think the analogy holds between the salami slicing as a meat salami and also the paper salami itself. Now salami slicing or salami publication usually refer to submitting different manuscripts drawn from data collected from a single research study or a single data collection period. However, there is no single definitions of salami publications in published literature, as Ding et al. Mentioned. So I will show you the inconsistency about the definitions of salami publications in published literature from 2002 until from 92 until 2000 and which one? 2017. So this is all of the definitions that the author collected from previous papers from 90s until 2011 something. So this is the definitions. I won't explain any much longer, but you can see from the slides later on. The committee will share you the slides later on. So why is salami slicing is bad? So here from the previous study, despite of the inconsistencies of the definitions in the literature, we must know that why salami slicing is bad. So splitting a study into smaller papers is considered a bad practice for the following reasons. The first one, readers may not understand the importance of the work if the results are published in several papers. The second one, readers who access only one papers may misinterpret the findings. And the last one, it wastes the readers, editors, and reviewers' time. So this is from the Sasaki and Tan, why salami slicing is bad, not only for ourselves, but also for the environment that we submit the paper into the journal or maybe the editorial board. So the questions, if you ask questions about the how to detect salami publications, maybe right now there's so many software to detect plagiarism, such as Authenticate or maybe Turnitin, but there is no single software applications or algorithm for detection for salami publications. I will show you through the systematic review that I already divided into several related works. And also, if you ask me about the salami publications always prohibited, and the answers, let's see from previous work that has a lot of things to do with this matter, true, pros, and also the cons. The first one, related works. The first study that I found in the literature survey in Scopus, the paper from Jefferson told me about the estimated of salami slicing prevalence, put it at 10 until 25 of published literature. So the hypothesis might be one journal has 10 until 25% of salami slicing prevalence. So the scientific community at large and government should take urgent steps to safeguard the public from the possible effect of fraudulent multiple publications. And also the authors should become aware the ethical concern publication with the uniform requirements and any policies at their home institutions. And there's also papers from Sain and Paladugu analyzed 3 leading surgical journals in 1998 with a grading system was developed to define several types of redundant publications. The first one is dual. Dual publications means that identical material, methods, and also conclusions. Potentially dual means almost identical material, methods, and conclusions. And the last one is salami slicing. Suspected study represents part of continuations of or partial reputations of the index articles. And they found almost 1 in every 6 original articles published in leading surgical journals represent some forms of redundancy. So most of the salami slicing mentions in medical or maybe health-related journals. This is the results of the Sain and Paladugu on 2001. They mentioned that the overall almost of the 600 articles in 3 journals, they found that 77 were considered products of salami slicing. So this is the result of their papers. The other related works related to the salami slicing is from Mojon and Azi, and also Mojon stated that honest errors or honest differences in interpretations of judgment of data are excluded from most definitions of scientific misconduct. So we see here the salami slicing is derivations of during writing the manuscript. So when we do or when we write the manuscript at the first thing in mind, the salami slicing is found. So the measurements against the salami slicing, as you can see here, there should be a policy in the institutions or maybe in the editorial journals that rules of several aspects such as formulations, communications, and help with the implementations of guidelines of good scientific practice until the limitations of the number of publications submitted for a job or a grant applications, quality instead of quantity. So this is the paper suggested by Mojon Azi and also Mojon on 2004. And the third related works is about the, Berlin and Durrani on 2006. So on 2009, there is a survey, a careful survey of article that published during 98 in 3 journals related surgery that revealed 17% represented some form of redundancy, but the paper from Durrani showed very encouraging results from the plastic surgery scientific community, which the level of redundancy is minimal. So we can see here that there is some intriguing discussions between the first paper and then the second paper that showed different results. The first one said that the redundancy is very important and also showed in the high results, but in the second paper here showed that the level of redundancy is minimal. Also the questions about the quality or quantity in research publications. Here, why the salami slicing, or maybe in several papers said that there is another term called the smallest publishable unit or SPU can be problematic if future researchers want to do systematic reviews and also meta-analysis, because some data could be overrepresented. And this also could, or salami slicing could also damage our reputation as an author, and also the judgment of academic staff for appointment, tenure, and promotion seem nowadays to be based on the quality of publication rather than the quantity. The fifth related works, this is very big number of survey that they analyze in their paper. Finally, and also Lariviere analyzed publication patterns of over 4,000 researchers between the years 1900 until 2013, have published 2 or more papers within 15 years in any of disciplines covered by the Web of Science. And the widespread belief that pressure to publish are causing the scientific literature to be flooded, for example, with salami is likely to be incorrect or at least exaggerated. And this is the figure that Gray and also the finally Lariviere show in his paper, and the data suggests that the contemporary science is not suffering from a salami slicing of papers. So they argue that the current policies aimed at countering this problem are likely to be ineffective. So the policies that could have negative consequences because curtailing the list of publications submitted in support of grant applications, or ignoring any considerations of productivity when evaluating institutions' research, might put scientists under even greater pressure to boost their citation scores, journal impact factor profile, and also visibility in the mass media, and to salami slice their collaborations, all at the possible expense of scientific quality and rigor. So the data suggests that the contemporary science is not suffering from salami slicing of paper. So there's another perspective that we can see from the slide. The first one say that the salami slicing is very important because it's a part of self-plagiarism, but the other papers say that the contemporary science is not suffering at all from the salami slicing of papers. So we know that the pros and cons from the salami slicing up till now. And another related works from Mubin, Gayas, Rizvi, and Khan assess the knowledge of scientific misconduct in publications among private and public sectors of medical students of Karachi in Pakistan in 2015. And the results show that the students have the knowledge of salami slicing, and the students from private sectors perform significantly better than the public sectors. Why is that? Because this paper is from the quantity analysis papers. We do not know about why the students from the private sectors perform better than the public sectors. And also Gray, Water, and McKay stated also in the nursing and midwifery science that selective outcomes and salami reporting are seemingly common. So from the nursing and also midwifery science, they said that the salami slicing or salami publications or maybe salami papers are mostly common. And this is the related works. Another related works, they suggest that the journals should keep pace with good research practice and reduce duplicate and salami publications by adopting and enforcing explicit publication policies with clear definition that distinguish between duplicate and salami publications. I already searched from the ethic committee in the Universitas Indonesia and also from other institutions in Indonesia. I haven't found any policies that related to the salami slicing. It may be it can be suggested to them that salami slicing could also be one of the policy that they want to revise in the future. So the last related works. So when is the salami slicing of data justified? Expert consensus is that if the slice of the study and questions test different hypotheses as opposed to the larger study or has a distinct methodology or populations being studied, then it is acceptable to publish it separately. And this is the recommended practice for us as an authors, also for the editors of the journals, peer reviewers, and also academic reward system. So this recommended practice by Ding et al. And also Walter suggested for us for preventing and reducing salami publication practices. And this is for our contribution from the Department of Library and Information Science to the library aspect. We've been taught, and also we also teach about the library as the gatekeeper functions, but how the library can be the gatekeeper function for the salami slicing methods or salami slicing practices. This can be seen as the editors or editorial office, because as the Universitas Indonesia have the platform for undergraduate thesis, graduate thesis, and also dissertations, maybe they can be develop policies and guidelines regarding the thesis, master or maybe dissertations, and also instructions for the authors, plagiarism checkers, standard check for redundancy, and also delineate policy for violations. And as the conclusions, I hope I make time. The pressure to publish is worse than 50 years ago. The dollars for research are even tighter. The money available at universities for bridging gaps in funding ever shrinking. And the tacit encouragement of tenure and promotion committees to have a junior faculty member to publish get hits, citation, news articles, when the quality of journals is diluted by hundreds of new unknown cyber publications with phantom editors is ever difficult to access, and combined to make salami slicing and semi-duplicative publication more common. For me, there is no single easy solutions, but if you have one great study, submit it at its best form, most complete form to the most appropriate journals. Do not publish in installment, do not publish in variants, and do not publish it more than once. We think this is an excellent advice. And as an early career researchers or as an early career educators, we also still wondering whether salami slicing and the under pressure to publish will be safe in the future, that I can play the game. Well, time will tell. So thank you for the opportunity, and I will get back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rahmi. It was very amazing and detailed presentation about salami slicing. And I summarize from your presentation that salami slicing, for many reasons, are considered bad practice of research publication process, especially because of the redundancy of the result of the published articles. However, Dr. Rahmi also identified eight works discussing about salami slicing practice and showed various perspectives of seeing salami slicing practice around the world. Thus, every stakeholder, including authors, journals, journal editors, and librarian, has responsibility to prevent and reduce salami slicing practice by developing the publishing research policies and also the research behavior. All right, dear participants, once again, If you have any questions or comments, please submit your questions on the Slido link, which will be sent by the committee in the chat box. Don't forget to mention your name and institution, because 3 selected Q&A participants will get exclusive souvenir from UI Library. All right, let's move to the third and the last topic related to Salami publication that will be presented by Ms. Jimena. Ms. Jimena, your time is 40 minutes. The session is yours.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. I
Hello,
hope to
Ms. Jimena.
close up. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Thank you.
Your voice is clear.
Okay, I hope I can make justice to the previous speakers and to honor this session with the presentation. So you've heard, let me change this. You've heard today a lot about salami slicing. Well, this will be that different too, but I wanted to give bits and pieces of several aspects as part of Elsevier. I wanted to give a sort of a global view of the situation, problem, and of salami slicing, and more focused, as the title says, on the rushing to publish, which is the other pandemic. So the harm that it does to publications, to scientific world, to patients, even when we think about where our outcomes and our research might end. So a little bit about myself. I'm a medical doctor by background. I'm a doctor in neuroscience and a medical writer. Currently, I work as clinical and research manager at Elsevier, and I started in Elsevier in 2012 and moved through different positions. I have practiced in primary care, in emergency settings in my home country, Colombia, in South America. Then I moved to Spain to undertake my PhD studies, and as clinical and research manager, I get to not only travel the world virtually as I'm doing now, but also physically, especially before the pandemic, the first pandemic, and deliver key messages that I can see from inside Elsevier, from our as perspectives as editors and publishers, and also then as a creator of content, and content that is delivered directly to the end user. So I have a quite 360 view of the problematic, and this is very close to my heart. Research is extremely close to my heart, and especially ethics in research. So let's start with our topic today. Well, we know this, researching is very hard, and it's very hard in every country, but I would say some countries might struggle more. There's lack of resources, there's lack of time, there's lack of incentives, of motivation, many reasons that make researching quite challenging. Unfortunately, it's deeply and unavoidably necessary, or not unfortunately, because it's the only thing that actually moves knowledge forward. So we need to conduct research, that's a fact. And these are some of the reasons as to why we should conduct research. And this might seem as obvious, but when you're a student, sometimes you don't know the impact of what you're doing, where it's going to end, what's going to happen with your knowledge. And that's why we might fall into the trap of the pandemic, of rushing to research, and of conducting misconduct without inadvertently, without even knowing. So why conduct research? Well, because we want to practice evidence-based medicine, or have an evidence-based practice. This means that we practice with the best available knowledge, that we join or mix our personal expertise and also the patient preferences. This is evidence-based practice or evidence-based medicine. In order to do that, we need to produce evidence. And you're the nucleus, you're where knowledge germinates from. Even a case study, even a preclinical study can surely be the base of future very well designed studies. So we need to start creating evidence ourselves, evidence that is high quality, that is ethical, that is transparent. And why do we need to do this? Because we know that evidence eventually, when translated into patients, is crucial to providing high quality and safe care. So again, you might think you're a long way towards the care of patients or a long way until you get to the care of patients, but actually you're not, because your research might be picked up by media, might be picked up by other researchers and built upon that. And if it's not transparent, if it's not done with the ethical standards and the good practices it has to be done with, then it might cause more harm than help. And finally, because common sense is just not enough when we're talking about human lives. So even if it's preclinical research, we eventually some of this will get translated into human beings. And again, we cannot cause more harm than help without knowing it, of course. So we know how these are some examples, very, yes, they're very impactful and very extreme examples of how research has helped evolve our knowledge in healthcare. But in the 1890s until early 1900s, well, heroin was used as a cough syrup to suppress cough. We know now the harms of opioids and how they have caused a huge crisis in the US. Specifically, it has been surfacing quite some years now, and the huge crisis there is of opioid dependence. Soft drinks, they used to be publicized as, you know, for kids. Of course, they kept them happy and plump and quiet. And now we know what is the association between sugar and soft drink consumption and mortality, even due to related causes to consumption of sugar. So, and these come from big observational studies, because you won't conduct a randomized control trial to see how bad people get from soft drinks, but definitely tracing back those problems, you can see the problematic, a huge problematic. And finally, this very interesting information and marketing piece of more doctors smoke Camels. Well, smoking was seen as a status thing, and it looked fancy and chic, and why not the doctor would smoke a cigarette every now and then in their office. And we, of course, know the huge burden that tobacco has on so many conditions such as these, right? So that's why research is so important, because it changes the status quo. It changes the way we practice and perceive medicine and healthcare in general. And I'm not speaking even anything about the rest of everything where research is impactful in population health, in social sciences, in biology itself. So anywhere and everything, research is important and impactful and should be conducted and continue to be conducted. And not only because it makes sense, but it has been traced, it has been researched, it has been evidenced the huge impact research has in hospitals, in return of investment, in how they become better at innovation, at processes, at developing better techniques, more efficient processes. So there's also evidence about how important research is to hospitals, and hospitals that research definitely mark a difference with compared to those that don't. So now that you're becoming trained at it and in the good practices, you'll become great researchers when you jump to the hospital setting, if you haven't already. And those of you that have, well, this is just another incentive, another push for you to continue on your research process and your research career. Unfortunately, and you've heard also from the talks before, there is a lot of research that is not useful. And I like this author very much. He's very versed in how to make research useful. He has very insightful and carefully drafted papers that I do suggest you take a look at. And this one is very, very interesting because, yes, blue sky research, you know, this is blue sky research, is that research that is done just because you want to know things. I studied in my PhD, I was studying opioid receptors in the ventral tegmental area of the cat, because the cat is a very good animal model for sleep-wake cycle studies. So that's blue sky research. Where are opioreceptors? Where are they located? Subcellular, cellular level. But eventually, human studies and clinical studies must be useful. They should be conducted with the aim to make a difference in healthcare and disease. That's the aim. It doesn't necessarily have to be accomplished, but this is our aim in our heads and should be taken as a realistic prospect, with a realistic prospect. So that's what he wants to highlight in this paper, is that you should be making a difference, hopefully, even if it's the smallest piece of information that a protein affects something and changes the way a drug works in your body. That's insightful. That's a difference that research makes. So I'm not talking about this huge 24,000 people observational studies, because those are difficult to conduct. But even for clinical study can have an impact in human beings and can be very, very significant for healthcare. So some of the ways to ask yourselves about what is useful, and this is where I want to mix all these perspectives that you have already and what you're currently doing, is when you start your project and you want to devise your study protocol and your research question, well, is there a health problem? Is there, have you assessed the literature in a systematic way to know there's no replication? You've heard this before, or duplication, because that's one of the pandemics we have now, is replication of studies that have already proven themselves. But just because we want to conduct them in our own setting to see if there's a difference, well, it causes just duplication, waste of time, waste of resources. So you can see all the characteristics. I won't go into them because we won't have enough time, but I wanted to highlight this one, information gain. And this is where salami slicing can be very problematic. So now you can see that salami slicing is not a problem when you publish. It's a problem since you start devising your own research. And that's why, as we heard before, we all have responsibilities in tackling the problem of salami slicing. So is the proposed study large enough and long enough to be sufficiently informative? So even if we cannot impact in this, because we don't have 100 years to study, we might have 2, and we have to think, okay, but is it going to be informative enough in those 2 years? So this is when we have to understand if our research is feasible, if it's novel, if it's going to be realistic in the time that we have, and strong enough that I can publish one good, solid, high quality study rather than very small ones, which is the problem of salami slicing. Unfortunately, there's a current reward system that has enormous pressure on everyone to publish. And unfortunately, there's a pressure to publish because you want to get a higher degree, because you want to get a job position, because there's not more citations, that's a different story, but more publications could be more reputation. But this is definitely causing a lot of unethical behavior to be introduced in the researching world, in the journals itself, in the editorial world, because the pressure is on everyone. So these are some of the negative consequences that we can have due to that pressure, that pandemic of the rush to publish, which are fabrication, falsification, plagiarism, duplicate publication, and redundancy. So we can see many of these characteristics are not overlap, but they share within them the problematic of salami slicing and of other misconduct behaviors, as we will see in the future. So salami slicing is just one of them, but there are many misconduct behaviors that we need to be aware of. So I didn't want to leave them aside because it's a big problematic that covers many other aspects, and salami slicing is one of them. So you can see there's you can see the source is the Office of Research Integrity. I love this name. They have this beautiful chapter. You can find the information here. I will share with you the slides afterwards if you want to, because I think it's great to know to know where we can find the information, also the sources, of course, but also where we can find more information than the one that I'm giving you now, because of the time we have. We have to be sort of concise, and I don't want to keep the information from you. This is my perspective of how I see things, but definitely you should be able to create your own perspective and opinions, of course. So according to this office, the Office of Research Integrity, the ORI, research misconduct, as I said before, it involves many aspects of research publishing and research, the conduct of research, and it can occur at all points of the research process, since the design, when I told you, when you think about the research question, until the publication of the study result. That is when Salami publishing can occur. And the main characteristics of this is that it is both willful and intentional. So we know what we're doing, and we should know what we're doing. That's why we have to know what we're breaking before we do it, because it doesn't excuse us from the fact that we're wrongdoing. So bear in mind that it can be done at any step of the process. It's not just at the end when I have my publication or want to go to send my publication for a journal to be accepted, submit my publication, but it starts from even the design of the study. What are some of the common types of misconduct? And I have organized them in descending order due to the length of the phrase, but you can see there are many that we need to be aware of. We cannot justify the fact that we do it because we didn't know. This is not a justification, and we will get penalized for this. We will get a spot in our track record as researchers if we're found to be doing any type of misconduct. And I have just added the redundant publication, which is the salami slicing, where we can, the topic of this conference, but we can fall into the trap of any other type of misconduct due to the rush to research. So what is the role in it, and what can we do about it as journal editors and as publishers, as Elsevieres? Well, the first thing I wanted to do is to give you an overview of what is the publication process, because I think it's important to know also what happens when we send a manuscript. So you send your manuscript, the editor-in-chief of the journal reviews this manuscript. If they think it's good enough for their journal, for the topic, the aims and scope, all their standards, and of course the quality of the journal has a big saying here. And this is telling you that sending your manuscript to journals that have doubtful reputation, that don't have very strict guide for author standards, that don't have an editorial board behind them to ensure that the quality of the process is transparent, is ethical, and very high standards, will always have more probabilities of allowing misconduct to happen and to be published. So that's why we want to target not only very high impact journals, because that's another problem and another challenge, but definitely journals that are supported by a well-reputed editorial board from an editorial company. So I'm not talking only about Elsevier, but I'm talking about all the publishers that have high standards to publish. So this is just a little insight into this. So if the manuscript is found to be suitable for the journal, it's sent to the reviewers. Again, reviewers, I've been asked to be a reviewer of publications, and if they're not from a publisher that I know or that I like, then I won't accept. So it's more difficult to get good reviewers in very smaller journals or journals that don't belong to one of the well-known or known publishers. So this is another challenge. So the manuscript is accepted if everyone likes what we're saying and everyone agrees. It's sent to production and publication. Fortunately, this does not happen. Usually we get a rejection, and also if we don't, we get a lot of comments from the reviewers. So what happens usually is either I get rejected, to 95% of the articles get rejected, then if what happens with the reviewers will send me revisions that then I need to review, I need to answer the reviewers. I send again the revised manuscript, the journal editor-in-chief reviews again this manuscript. Let me change the pointer. Sorry, I just want to change the pointer here. The journal editor screens the manuscript and the process goes again. You can see this is an iteration that can happen as many times as needed. Otherwise, the reviews are assessed, sent by the editor. The further review is needed, the manuscript is sent to the reviewer. So there's different cycles that we can go through, or then the reviews are assessed by the editor and the manuscript gets rejected. So we can get rejected in several parts of the process, but you can see the whole process as it happens, and it can take between weeks to years, depending on the degree of reviews and the degree of changes we need to make and iterations it happens. So you can see that misconduct can happen in any place of the process. And what is the role of the editor-in-chief then? Well, the editor-in-chief is responsible for every single step of the process, and it's a huge responsibility because they are the first ones who screen your article and can catch types of misconduct. But if they don't, then they send it to the reviewers and they have to select the reviewers very carefully. So that's why they have a huge responsibility in the ethics and transparency of health research or any research in general. And it's a very, very challenging position. You have to know a lot, to read a lot, and to have a lot of knowledge to be the editor-in-chief. So, and they're the ultimate responsible. So if anyone wants to point fingers, well, the editor-in-chief has to respond. I don't know if you remember at the start of the other pandemic, COVID pandemic, there were two very important articles published in the New England Journal of Medicine and in Lancet, and they got retracted because eventually they noticed that the population they had used was not from a reliable source. It was from a company that actually doesn't exist anymore. So the articles needed to be retracted. And this didn't only cause harm to the authors, but also to the journals. So the editor-in-chief has to come out and speak and say what happened and give explanations and make changes in the editorial processes so that this doesn't happen. So it's a very challenging position. They are supported by a wider team of the editorial board and you can see everything that they do. They assess the incoming submissions, make the decisions when the changes come, the changes the reviewers requested. They have to review them also. They need to ensure that every publication meets the standard, not only of the journals, but of the research community, what's expected of them, that the content in the journal is scientifically valid and follows the aims and scope of the journal. And they select the editorial board members so that this machine needs to be kept updated and incomplete without conflict of interest as unbiased as possible to be ethical and transparent, decides what to publish and when facing conflicting peer review reports. This happens also a lot. So they have to make decisions on who to follow and based on which grounds. And finally, investigate the cases of suspected research misconduct. And this is exactly what we're talking about today. So you can see, and this is just picking, you can see from the many sources that I picked this is just some summary of all the roles, but when you go into the sources, there's many more details into this, and you can see how important it is to know why it's so important to choose a journal that has a good reputation, that has been cited. I'm not even talking about the high impact factor. I mean, that is known in the topic that you're talking about, that has a visible, reliable editorial board. This is to avoid falling into the prey of predatory journals. So you have to know who you're talking to and who's reviewing your work. That is your responsibility, and that will ensure that the quality you're publishing is good enough to be cited besides any other very high quality publication. So in a nutshell, how do journals respond to suspected misconduct? So the first thing that you do is determine the validity of the allegation. So you can have a whistleblower, you can have someone say, hey, I think there's been misconduct in this research. You have to assess where does this come from? Is this valid? Is this allegation valid? Is the source, can it be proved or in some way known where the source comes from, because we cannot just go allegedly blaming anyone of misconduct if we don't know that if there's a reliable source. Then we have to see if the allegation fits within the definitions of research misconduct. So there's evidence and enough knowledge to know what category does the allegation fall into, and we have to categorize it. Well, not we, the journal's editors. Then we contact the authors. The authors are contacted, and they must give explanations, very thorough explanations of why this happened, what was the source of the alleged misconduct, and give reasoning for this. And of course, if this happens, this depends on when it happens, the consequences of these allegations and then the explanation of the authors will have a different route. So before publication, it's sort of easier because it hasn't reached the public view, so you can tackle the problem beforehand. So it's easier to limit maybe the scope of the damage even. So the allegation is evaluated, as I said, by the editor-in-chief, and they can use flowcharts that have the Committee of Publications Ethics. This is the COPE flowchart. You have the link below, and this is a flowchart for a lot of types of misconduct. You can see it gives you a very direct way on how to proceed. If the explanation is satisfactory, they continue with the peer review process. Otherwise, they will reject the manuscript just entirely. And the authors are informed of the misconduct and warned what are the consequences of this, and if they decide to neglect that misconduct allegation, this misconduct warning, and decide to publish in another journal that might not catch that misconduct, well, there's going to be consequences because the scientific community has already been alerted, the editorial board, which are scientists too, and they will probably induce, will be whistleblowers and induce retraction. So that's what happens when after publication, there's an allegation of misconduct. Usually, if there's no misconduct, what will happen is that the authors or the journal itself will publish a letter to the editor, or will publish a letter saying, well, we have corrected this, we have conducted additional analysis. I mean, no one wants to get a retraction, not a journal, not the authors. So if there's no misconduct, evident misconduct that has been proven, then the best way is to even correct what has happened, why, if there's no real misconduct, give explanations to the world by publishing a letter to the editor, or and clarifying if there have been any other analysis done and providing that clarification. If it's still suspected, the editor-in-chief then needs to take another step, which is contacting the institution and asking or requesting for further clarifications. And depending on the misconduct, the editor-in-chief needs to make this very difficult decision of to issue a retraction or correction note, as I said here. A retracted paper looks like this. If you haven't seen it, it has a huge red label, at least the journal, Elsevier journals, huge red label saying retracted. Then they're retracted also from any manager systems, reference manager systems. This article has been retracted. It appears everywhere. So nobody wants to get a retraction. This is something that is highly unadvisable if you still want to, if anyone still wants to try the system, right? So you can read some interesting examples, because I think one of the most difficult things to know is am I conducting misconduct? Am I doing it inadvertently, and it's difficult. So I think looking at real life cases is very important. So again, from the office of the ORI, you can see some examples. And this is a website that gathers, it's a very popular website now, increasingly more, that collects all the retracted papers. It's called Retraction Watch. So also when you're trying to get examples, and even when you're starting on your own research, take a look at the Retraction Watch website to see what are the papers that have been retracted, on which grounds, and avoid that doing that in your own research when you're planning it. So how to avoid falling into the temptation of salami slicing, because we think we're going to get more citations or we're going to get more publications. Again, publications are not enough. Citations are much more important, because this means that your research is getting through to the public. That calls back to this first article, why most research is not useful. We want to conduct impactful research that is useful, even if it means describing the effects of a protein over a signaling pathway, for example. So I'm just going to touch on two very important parts of the research process that can, where we can fall into the trap of salami slicing. So during the research process, well, this is just an overview of the research process. I won't go into to the details because I have 10 minutes, maybe. Let me just check. Do I still have a little bit of time to talk? I just have a few more slides, so I just want to go, yes, quickly over this. This is the research process in a nutshell. I have, I think, 10 minutes. And this is a process, as I see, you can find it in other places. If you search for the research process, sometimes it's a funnel, sometimes it's a pathway, but I think it's a continuous, never-ending process. So you find the research process, the research topic is the first part, then you identify if there's a knowledge gap, then you have to devise your research question, you have to define your study type, what type of study you're going to conduct, if it's observational, interventional, whichever the study type to answer, if it's a clinical study, to answer the question, then you devise, you write the study protocol, you submit it to the editor, to the committees, to the ethics committees, and so on. You conduct your study, you get your data report, you do your data analysis, then you write the article, and then you submit. And this is an ongoing process. Of this process, there are two places that are very tricky. One of them is designing the research question, which is the most important part to designing a high quality research study. So you must know, as you have heard it before, that the salami slicing definition is that you cannot have the same question for 5 studies. You cannot have the same outcomes for five different studies. If the question is different, if the outcomes are different and the conclusions are different, then you can do different papers, different manuscripts. But otherwise, they belong to the same manuscript. So the research question guides you to the planning, the analysis, and the reporting of your study. It's the basis of your research study. It's where you present the ideas that you want to be examined. And it can happen here that there are studies that are very big, longitudinal research observational studies that can have interim reports. This is when salami slicing is not salami slicing. They're interim reports. They're preliminary reports of the findings because they take years to conduct, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years to conduct. Well, you want to report maybe at a 10-year or 5-year cut, and then you can, of course, the next year will build on that knowledge. It doesn't mean that you're cutting the end of your study into smaller pieces. You're doing preliminary reports as you go along. So this is when your study is valid to be separated. Also, for example, you want to study the pharmacodynamic, pharmacokinetics, safety, and adverse events of one study. Well, instead maybe of publishing in one single study, maybe you want to decide to publish pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics because they have a different research question to the adverse events and safety, and efficacy of your. This is a different research question, different conclusions, different outcomes. This is not salami slicing. This is making different manuscripts that make sense because they answer to a different research question. So inappropriate questions lead to irrelevant answers, waste of time, and waste of money. And the second is the study protocol. So when you're writing the study protocol, you need to devise everything, what methods you're going to use. The methodology has to be very transparent. And this is when you define your outcomes, when you define your variables. And this is when you know, is this going to be part of one single manuscript or of several manuscripts? You already know this since the study protocol. And as I said before, misconduct can happen at any part, during any part of the study and the research protocol. There's misconduct in the research protocol. There's misconduct in the reviewers. There's misconduct everywhere. So we have to be very alert not to be induced into misconduct. And this can happen since we start designing our own study. And also we can encounter different types of misconduct at different stages. As I said before, right from the original idea that we have, the origination of the idea, to the publication of the results. So some of the advice that I can give you is when you need to divide your study into smaller segments, or you want to, always be transparent and show exactly what the data that is being reported in the current publication is related to previous publications and so on. So in the cover letter that you have to send to your, when you want to publish your manuscript, you design a cover letter, you have to be very clear and state, we have published this before. These findings build upon previous knowledge that we reported in this journal and so on. So be very transparent. This is building upon content. This is not breaking content into smaller pieces. So you can do this in the cover letter, and then also in the methods or in the introduction, you can state that you're already published a study with the previous results and you want to build upon that. This is not also salami slicing. This is not replication. This is citing, self-citation. Self-citation is not misconduct. You cannot go overboard, but it's not misconduct. So you can self-cite yourself when you have published something that is similar to what you're publishing, but different enough to warrant its own manuscript. If you want to submit 2 studies simultaneously to different journals, be very aware that you're not submitting the same study. You're submitting different studies with different aims, different scope, different outcomes, as I said, research question. So disclose if there's any overlap, because sometimes you use the same population with different outcomes. Be very, very clear on this, because otherwise the reviewers can be shared among journals. You know they can be, so they can receive both of your manuscripts. So you have to be very transparent, always disclosing where the population comes from, if there's any other, if that study is being not the same one, but another study that comes from that same population is being assessed or sent to another manuscript. So in the cover letter, always disclose this and describe how that's why the data is related to the larger project. So you might want to have one smaller population of the whole population, a subpopulation, to study pharmacodynamics or pharmacogenetics, and then the whole population is going to answer more clinical questions. So this is where you have to be very transparent and very clear that the research question or questions, outcomes, and conclusions are going to be different. And everyone is to be aware of this. The whole community, scientific community, needs to be aware of this. So some of the ways to avoid any form of research misconduct: act very consciously. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. You can be penalized by this. You can be retracted by this. So be very aware of the laws. And the only way we can do this is practicing good habits, and of course, acquiring knowledge. So we practice good habits when we know what we need to practice on, and obtain training. So this is where I give suggestions. Want to give you some suggestions of how to obtain training and knowledge. Promote a better research culture in your institutions. And there's this great piece that is called 7 Ways to Promote Better Research. Some of them are necessarily, you don't have to invest a lot. You don't have to invest a lot resources, economic resources or people or time on this. Facilitate open discussions, allow people to speak their mind, to ask questions. As dumb as they might seem, we have to incentivize and motivate an environment of safety, that we can talk anything that we want without being without being penalized or pointed to. So open discussions, provide career counseling and coaching and support, as we're doing today. This is part of the support that the university is giving to you, University of Indonesia. So continue doing this, because it's immensely useful for everyone. You have to develop a consensus, provide rules. One of the things that I found very frustrating when I did research was that there were no rules. Everything was permitted. So even people that had not been written, had not done the study, were allowed to be part of the authors. There have to be rules. The research is done because we care, but it's also done as a business. As a business, we want to eventually lead to something that is useful. It should be managed as a business. You have to have rules. You have to have ethics. You have to have a code of conduct. The behaviors need to be promoted of people that do wrongdoing. They have to be penalized. It cannot continue, because that conduct tends to be translated to other junior scientists that come to the team. So we need to be very clear on what are the standards of our research team and a research lab, and then our research group at a more clinical level. There's smaller ways that we can set a culture and improve the morale. For example, you can do research cafes, and there's in the paper that you have in the We Forum agenda, you have an example of a cafe. You can do science. There's called I forgot, journal clubs, where you discuss an article, and you with a small team, your colleagues, and you say, okay, what was the research question? What were the outcomes? Was the research question answered? Do you see any types of misconduct? Do you see sound methodology, and so on? So be critical and practice that critical thinking in research cafes or research or journal clubs. Identify any gaps, and then fill these gaps with courses for development, and highlight the importance, as this all links to, of the research culture. Engage all staff in the organization, and you can do this by hosting, for example, a culture and integrity day. So today's one, a culture and integrity day, which I find very exciting and very honored to be part of this. For those of you who have access to Clinical Key, you can also research more on research culture and find articles that give you evidence and an evidence base on what is a research culture and why should it be promoted. So I also motivate you to look at these sources. You have to refine your researching skills. What are they, and why are they important? Again, this is a piece of information that you can look at. And I showed you, I mentioned briefly, COPE, creating a culture of publication integrity together. This is where you can find the core practices. You can find how editors guide themselves. This is where the flow charts come from, guide themselves to identifying misconduct in research. You can train yourself and find training courses, lots of them. They're free in Researcher Academy. You just have to log in, create credentials, and you have this whole pathway of smaller and different webinars. They can be 1 hour long or 15 minutes long. You can find some from, for example, the origins of scientific publishing, or how to conduct evidence-based research. So this is a free platform that Elsevier provides to any researcher, budding researcher, and so on. And editors, yes.
Dr. Alvira, sorry, your time is up. I think I will give you 2 minutes to conclude your presentation.
Yes, please. Just 2 more slides. Thank you very much for the
Thank you.
heads up. So Editage, again, a great site to find information about research. Reading time is very short usually, and you can find more on Salami publications. Equator, great to understand how to report your findings and to enhance the quality and transparency of health research. So use it when you're publishing your results, and also when you want to conduct your study protocol, you want to write it. Here you have the Spirit guideline to write your study findings, to write your protocol. And last but not least, again, Clinical Key. There's a lot of websites and interesting findings links. So I'll send you the presentation so you can click on them. And the main takeaways of this session today: salami slicing is a type of research misconduct. Don't be misled. You can get a paper retracted by conducting salami slicing. Editors can spot cases, but it all comes down to your own ethical standards and the ethical standards of your institution, your research group, and your research team. So follow good practice, good research practices, and research culture is pivotal to research excellence, as we saw before, the 7 ways of promoting better research culture. And remember, not knowing the law is not an excuse. You can get severely penalized by this, and you don't want to have a spot in your budding researching or ongoing research career. So thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been useful, and I'm open to any questions you might have through the chat or through the Q&A if we have, or through the chat. Otherwise, I'll send the presentation to share with the attendees. And yes, very happy to be with you today here. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Alvira. Your presentation is very comprehensive about the research process and publication process, and also about salami slicing and how publisher, authors, and chief editor in the journal has a responsibility to the issue. I also noted several points from Dr. Alvira presentation today. She mentioned some research and publication practices in health discipline, and also some of the practices related to salami slicing. And she also emphasized that besides salami slicing, there are many other research misconduct, including plagiarism, falsification, and fabrication of data, which are also cannot be accepted ethically in the research. Dr. Alvira also described the whole process in author side and publisher side related to the research and publication process, and point out the role of editor-in-chief in the editorial process to prevent salami slicing. I also highlighted from Dr. Alvira presentation that current reward system may lead scientists to misconduct the research process and procedure, including the practice of salami slicing. So to avoid salami slicing, researchers should train themselves and conduct good research practices and develop good research culture. All right. Once again, thank you, Dr. Jimena Alvira, for your presentation. From 3 of our speakers' presentation, I can conclude that salami slicing is considered as a bad or misconduct research practice, because separating research into several publications may lead into duplication of the result, redundancy, or even self-plagiarism. And also, this practice will confuse and may lead the misleading readers' understanding about the result of the research. Even though separating research into several publications also can be done, but with certain conditions, including be very transparent in stating everything in the publication, and by referencing about the difference with the previous or another paper published. Therefore, scientists, researchers, author, journal editor, or publisher, and also librarian should actively participate in a good research practice through the research process and the policies to avoid and prevent this type of research misconduct, and to conduct the whole process of research ethically. All right, everyone, that was our last presentation of the session. Now it is the time for Q&A session. We will invite all the speakers to join again in this session. So we have about 40 minutes for the Q&A session, and I think the committee will show the question. All right, I will wait about the question. All right, the first question is from Kartika Citra from Faculty of Pharmacy, Universitas Indonesia. The question is for Professor Abriza. What can we do to the remaining data if we want to avoid salami slicing? If multi-center study was published as several articles, is it considered salami slicing? Please, Professor Abriza.
Okay, Kartika, and also other viewers. Just now I did stress, okay, on the importance of a particular research project, all right, to be published as a whole, okay, in one publication, all right. But sometimes, okay, it is not practical, okay, especially when we talk about the social sciences. In social sciences, sometimes it is not practical. All right. So in cases where where there is a research group, okay, it's a large research project. It's a large research project. I'm talking about researchers collaborating in a large research project, and there's a lot of data that you collect. Sometimes, okay, it is in the form of longitudinal data. All right. So and sometimes you involve several disciplines. Okay, even it goes to several countries, all right? So it is justified, okay, where you can actually publish your publication in relation to the specific objective of the study. Yeah, so meaning that there will be data that will not be presented in the second paper. There will be data, new data that is coming out in the third paper. But in general, there will be one anchor, I would say, publication that talks about, okay, the overall research. All right. So you talk about what can we do with the remaining data if we want to avoid salami slicing. Okay, I give you one example. Yeah, because for social sciences, especially in qualitative study, I would say that is very much less tendency for you to do salami. Okay, because for social sciences, sometimes you have different research questions. Different research questions, sometimes the research questions are addressed by a particular data collection technique. So it would be, you know, it's not that easy for you to do salami. Yeah, by right, it is advisable for you to present your research, okay, based on the research questions that you have. All right. So if let's say, okay, you have a large study. Okay, let's go back to the impact of to the impact of COVID-19 vaccine. For example, you do a national study, all right, in Indonesia, for example. All right, so it will be definitely a longitudinal study. Okay, data is collected for a particular duration, all right, because you're looking at the impact of the vaccine. Okay, so that one and then you're looking at a particular general population. Okay, so that is your main publication. All right, so you can actually, I would say, publish, okay, different aspect of the data when you look at a particular research question. For example, you can look at how detailed the synthesis of the vaccine. So it's a different research question. Okay, a different data that you have, and then you can look at the side effect of the vaccine. So the side effect of the vaccine, you can also look at a particular, age. Yeah, for example, maybe for under 12. Yeah, you can look at for the babies. You can look at for other elderly data. So in this case, you have different data, different research question, but you get it from the main, from the major research project. All right. So in this case, definitely it is not considered as salami slicing. Yeah, by right, it will be good if, let's say, you can publish this kind of research in sequential publication because it addressed to a particular audience, to a different journal, for example. When you talk about, the impact of a vaccine to babies, for example, all right, so it can be published to journals that are related to, a childcare or a pediatrician, pediatrics, read by pediatricians, for example. All right. Okay. So yes, as long as you are transparent, okay, in fact, you want to publish the same data also, that is okay, but to the extent that it will not go to the same research question, okay, yeah, the same methodology, but of course there are different types of data collection in your research, isn't it? All right. Well, we'll talk about when we talk about even for quantitative data also. Yeah. So one thing that I would say, Katika and the rest, it can be inhibit salami publication or salami slicing, or our speaker, Dr. Alvira, you put it in the form of lemon. So it's lemon slicing. I notice your slides are all lemons. You slice the lemons. So lemon slicing that I learned for today, it can be prohibited. Yeah, it can be prohibited. All right. So as long as you understand what it is and the intention of doing so. Yeah. Okay. So definitely, you can publish with the remaining data, because the data is new data that is not connected to the maybe the second or the third paper. All right. But what is the intention of you to publish? So that is, to me, is very important. What is the purpose for you to publish? All right. Yeah. Because if you want to communicate, that is very important for you to communicate that findings to a particular stakeholder group or to the audience of the journal by all right. So that is actually the obligation. Okay, so I hope I understand Alvira Katika's question, Dr. Hanif.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much,
thank you.
Professor Abriza, for your answer. I think it's very clear response from Professor Abriza. I think I will move to the next question from Pamuka from School of Strategic and Global Studies, Universitas Indonesia. The question is for Dr. Rahmi. The question is there any regulation so far in Indonesia that manage the salami slicing and plagiarism? Please, Dr. Rahmi.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Pamuka, for the questions. I could answer this very shortly. As I mentioned on one of my slides, it seems that there is no article discusses salami slicing from Indonesia in the international papers and also in the national papers. So I hypothesize that this term is new in the Indonesia community, and also up till now I have experienced in submitting article studies in the social and humanities fields at the psychology faculty. But for the written rules, I do not know much about the ethical procedure, but if you want to submit the ethical rules into the Faculty of Psychology as the representative of the social and humanities field, then you may be welcome to the search about the ethical clearance. But up till now, I haven't heard about the regulations so far in Indonesia. Thank you, Mr. Pamuka, sorry.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rahmi. And I will move to the next question. The third question is from Bagus Aryo for Dr. Simena. The question is, what is our stand if there is a sponsor who wants you to do a salami publication? Is salami publication are same as paraphrasing, but in a bigger scope? Please, Dr. Jimena.
Okay, so I'll answer the second question first. No, they're different. Paraphrasing is using words, changing a little bit the words that have been published before of other authors of yourself. So that's considered by many journals and in many instances plagiarism rather than salami slicing. So it usually might happen more easily when junior scientists and junior authors, it's difficult to write. Sometimes it's very challenging to find a different way of expressing what has already been done, for example, in the introduction of your manuscript. So we tend to change a few words and the order, and that's not enough. You have to put writing in your own words. And if actually you can't, then make sure and always ensure that you cite the original source. So paraphrasing is different, and it's as I said, some journals might consider you have the plagiarism check when you send your manuscript usually, and it will give you a percentage of the phrases, words, text that have been copied or taken from other sources, and it will give you a percentage, 20, 13, 70. So it depends on the cutting point that the journal has. They will return the manuscript to the authors and say, please cite the original sources, and or directly reject your manuscript for plagiarism. So there are different levels of paraphrasing that can fall right into overt plagiarism. Salami slicing is different because it's breaking one single study into smaller pieces to get more publications. It's the same question, research question, the same population with smaller findings that should be part of the same study that then are broken into smaller pieces, but they have the same introduction, as I said, the same population that as we have said before, Professor Abrisa and Dr. Rami, there's a very, very clear definition of salami slicing, where paraphrasing is a little bit more fluid, let's say. And if a sponsor wants to do salami publication, well, definitely it's going to be your name on it. I would never advise for anything to follow any misconduct that is suggested, because again, not knowing the law does not excuse you from doing it. So, but maybe try to find, if it's really salami publication, maybe you can find a justification to do 2 publications if the content is strong enough with different conclusions, different outcomes, different research question to do 2 publications. So watch the examples of the presentation that I will send you, or find them. You can find them in COPE or in the ORI, the Office of Research Integrity, just to guide yourself as to what is and what is not, because we cannot go to the extreme of, oh my God, I'm going to fall into salami publication and publish one article in 10 years. We have to know the rules, but also the cases. Maybe they're not promoting salami publication, but just different findings, they're responding to different questions from the same population. So that won't be salami publication. So just be aware of the definition, and yes, maybe it's not, maybe it is, but know the definition well before you answer to the sponsor.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Jimena. For the next questions, please committee. All right, the next question is from Mr. Suryadi from Makassar, Sulawesi, to Professor Abriza. The question is how to deal with publications that use salami slicing if it happens, if it already happens. Please, Professor Abriza.
Okay, I will share my experience as the journal editor and also reviewer. Okay, so it's very common nowadays, yeah, for a reviewer actually, when review paper, make sure that the paper has not existed before. So you just Google. Isn't it true? Okay, so it's very common for peer reviewer to do this. All right, so you have to check first that the paper has not published before. Yeah, okay. In cases where definitely you can see that meaning that as an editor or reviewer, after you have gone through the paper, you look at the references. Yeah, in the case that the paper is good, you can salvage the paper. All right. You feel that the paper is publishable, all right, but there are evidences that the paper has been segmented from an earlier study. What you need to do is you have to inform the editor as a reviewer. Yeah, you have to inform the editor, and some reviewers will also bluntly highlight that in the reviewer report. Okay, so as an editor, yeah, for me, okay, when when a particular paper, it is clearly salami segmented, and if it can be salvaged, so the author need to know, and then the author will provide justification and all that. All right. Okay. So if it is part of a larger study, but then this is very common where some in quantitative research. I'm not talking about evidence-based practices. For library science, you can easily see this. Okay, first you publish it one, all right, and then you start publish the descriptive analysis. You see, and then you start publish 2-3 hypotheses in one paper. All right, and then you start publish another, another set of hypotheses in one paper. Whereas that are actually covered, okay, in the first paper. Okay, the inferential statistic, testing of the hypothesis covered in the first paper. It's just that, okay, the findings are not being detailed enough in the first paper. All right. So let's say, okay, in the second paper, the author want to present the descriptive analysis. Let's say it is about readiness, readiness of using a particular technology. All right. So that when you talk about readiness, the first paper talk about readiness, but it incorporates cognitive readiness, the practices, the behavior. But then when you segment it into certain, the cognitive readiness, one paper, the physical readiness, for example, infrastructure readiness, one paper. So I believe that it is a salami slicing. All right, because a particular reader cannot read, cannot hold, cannot grasp, okay, the whole research, all right, in one paper. You can actually see some relationship, okay, infrastructure, readiness to infrastructure with cognitive readiness, with knowledge about using a particular technology, for example. So I would foresee that as a salami slice. So very common, okay, we are going to reject the paper. So if it is very common that it is very clear that it is segmented, all right, part of a larger study, and a particular question that has been incorporated in the first paper is being published as one paper, just one objective. We talk about the technological readiness, yeah. But the paper, the whole project is about the readiness in general. Okay, readiness encompass technology readiness, or maybe personal readiness, cognitive readiness. You see, yeah. So how to deal? All right. Okay, if the paper can be salvaged, you can caution the author, okay, justify it, connect it to the previous research and all that. But if it is nothing unusual, okay, that you want to talk about in the paper, just mention about the descriptive analysis, how many percent are ready and all that, not ready and all that, definitely, okay, it is not to be published and in impact factor journal. All right, so you can publish it elsewhere. So that's what we tell the authors. Okay, so we cannot accept. Okay, when we wish you all the best in finding another publication avenue to publish your journal. Okay, right. So it's better to do that rather than you accept, and there will be people commenting and all that, right? Regarding because people do now comment, open peer review, post peer review. People do comment. Okay, even people can easily tweet about a particular paper if the paper is not significant to be published in an impact factor journal. So actually we can see this recently. There's a journal, I think, that published a special issue. Okay, some articles are being segmented. The special issues, the first paper is published elsewhere, but then in the special issue, you have papers that have salami, that are practically salami slice, and then you have papers that are not within, okay, the particular discipline of that journal, because the journal is on something to do with environmental sustainability, but there are papers that are not related. So yeah, someone, okay, very a prolific author will tweeted that on Twitter. So actually starts on more discussions and all that, but it is a healthy discussion. People start to, an eye opener for journals that do practice this. All right. So there are actually people who are watching you, not only to the point that it will tarnish your reputation, but also tarnish the journal and also the editor and the publisher. Okay. All right. From me. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Abriza. And for the next question for Dr. Rahmi from Prasetyo Yuwinanto from Surabaya. The question is, can we use software or program to detect salami slicing, like maybe Turnitin or another software Please, Dr. Rahmi.
Okay, thank you for the questions, Mr. Prasetyo. This is a very nice questions. As I explained in my slides that yes, we can use software or program to detect salami slicing, but the problem is there are some aspects of publications that are not objectively detected by software applications and therefore present a serious threat to publication ethics. For example, up till now, there is no software applications or algorithm for detections of salami publications. Like Professor Abriza told us that there is like segmented publications, salami publications or segmented publications is distinct from redundant publication, which is usually characterized by similarity of hypothesis, methodology, or results, but not text similarity. So I think this aspect are not objectively detected by software applications, and that's why all of my related works that I've already explained in my sessions are mostly comes from the editorial notes, or most of the complaints is from the editorial board and the journal sections, and they are all complain about the text plagiarism that can easily detected by the software checking. So yes, we can use the Turnitin and authenticate or anything about the software, but all of the research related works that I've already explained, manually selected which one of the papers comes from the Salami publications, or maybe dual publications or redundant publication and etc. Or maybe there are some suggestions from Professor Abriza and also Dr. Alfira for this matter. Do you have an experience about the software applications?
No, not yet. I think AI is eventually trying to seep through, but it's in the very early stages. I think training in the ethical standards that should be practiced in research, as in any discipline, have to be reinforced constantly. And everyone should be the watchers. As Dr. Brisa said also, anyone can get tweeted now. You can get social media wrongdoing is immediately known in the world. And what we have to think now is that what we do in research can eventually lead to harm in patients, right? So, and in animals, and it's unnecessary use of everything. So we need to be aware of what we're doing, but not yet. The only is the plagiarism checkers, but they don't identify salami slicing yet.
So I can agree with that.
Yeah.
I hope this answered your question, Mr. Prasetyo.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Rahmi and Dr. Alfira, for your answer. So the next question is from Putri Pratiwi from Faculty of Medicine Library, Universitas Indonesia. The question is for Dr. Alfira. The question is, Indonesia has diverse demographics and races. So how to make good evidence-based research with data like this to avoid salami slicing? Please, Dr. Alfira.
I think it's a very interesting question and very true to the nature of Indonesia. But I think it answers itself that given the amount of the number of races and demographics, there's a lot of need for knowledge to understand if there are differences in many things. I'm talking about diagnostics, therapeutics, responses, prognosis, risk factors. So you can, I think it's an endless source of information and of knowledge. I could give you two very important things for me that make evidence-based a good evidence-based research. without having to do salami slicing, because there are two different topics for me. Is collaboration, and the University of Indonesia already does a lot of international collaboration. And if you see the numbers of times the papers get cited when it's an international collaboration, it doubles almost the national collaboration. So trying to collaborate, which is finding similar groups of researchers that conduct your research and finding similarities. And you might have a population that is similar in Latin America, for example, or in other parts of other countries, and you might decide to collaborate. So that's one way of making good evidence based research without needing to cut your research short of conducting high quality, impactful research. The other one is understand the policies of the country, where the gaps may be. For example, population health policies. Usually there's campaigns to vaccine campaigns for HPV, for example, or to conduct preventive measures. Those can be very good and impactful areas of research, because more research is needed to understand what can be the best ways to prevent the population going into chronic conditions. So know well which areas gap of knowledge, which areas still are in need of understanding risk factors or prognostic factors, for example. And those could be good areas to research that do not have to induce to any type of salami publications. When you're conducting, so those are the two main suggestions, just find areas of gap. And to do that sometimes, or the gap of knowledge, you can assess or conduct a systematic search, and not do a systematic review, but conduct a systematic search. And when you find very high quality, there are tools also to assess the systematic searches, the systematic reviews. So when you find quite high quality systematic reviews, look for those terms and words that might lead to gaps of knowledge, such as it has not yet been described, we still don't know, the answer is not yet, those words that lead to the gap of knowledge. And then you might have your own, you might have ideas to conduct your own research. So if you there are already gaps of knowledge that apply to your own demographics and races, then they can be the source of your research. So I think there's a lot of area and room to research. We need to go out there and understand what's in the world that is still not yet answered, that can apply to your own own country. So go out of the box and think about novel and feasible research topics by identifying those gaps of knowledge. And then if you're able to collaborate with an international institution, then it's going to be a larger, more impactful research that will certainly avoid the trap of salami slicing.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Alvira, for your for your answer. Maybe we can have one or two other question. The question is from Sandra for Professor Abriza. The question is, the researchers produce a conceptual paper from the literature review and another article with a qualitative approach in the same study. Is it a salami slicing? Please, Professor Abriza.
Okay, thank you. All right. So I believe Sandra asked this conceptual paper from literature review. Okay, so that is one article. Another article, qualitative approach in the same study. Another article, definitely this is not. It is very clear it is not salami slicing. Okay, because when we talk about coming up with a conceptual paper from the literature review, the methodology is different. All right, so it will be based on maybe content analysis. It can be systematic literature review, to come up with a conceptual paper. I mean, it depends on the research question, okay, from the literature review. The literature review might be in the form of bibliometric study, yeah. So the methodology is different, but this is part of a larger study, yeah. So the qualitative approach in the same study, it might I'm not sure because this is not detailed. The question is not detailed. Qualitative approach might cover the qualitative data gathering technique, which can be from interviews, from focus group, and all that. So definitely, I can see that the paper will not have similar research question, will have different methodology, will have different data, and it is two separate papers. All right. However, it is this is from my experience. Some journals might not want to publish a paper that is not, mature enough, meaning that it is still a conceptual paper, just a conceptual paper. Perhaps it is not that, it does not have value to certain journals. All right, because the journal wants something that is, something that has, the implication to the society or to the community that the journal serves, to the audience. All right. So the conceptual framework, conceptual paper, it has not been tested. Some journals might not want to publish that. Okay. So very often conceptual papers, especially that comes from literature review, sometimes it is not publishable. Okay, in good journals. Yeah, because these journals, they want research results. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much,
Okay. All right,
Professor Abriza.
So it is not salami slicing. Don't worry about it. All right. Even okay, if let's say, if I refer to the previous questions about Indonesian having, heterogeneous group and size and all that, if you publish a paper that is comprehensible enough to the audience that you want the paper, to be read, it is okay. It's just make sure what is the intention of your research. All right, so it can be published, but it might not be published in a journal. If let's say you just want to report on the side effect of vaccine, okay, for again COVID-19 vaccine to a particular group in Indonesia, for example, all right, to Papua, let's say, to certain the East Java and all that, all right. Maybe it need not be publishable in a form of a journal article. You might want to, because when you publish in a journal, okay, your intention is to advance science, you see, okay? It's more on knowledge sharing, and in the end, people will use it and apply it in their own setting, all right? But you can always publish it for the benefit, for the benefit of the public. For example, public want to know the impact, okay, of COVID-19 vaccine to a particular region in Indonesia. So you might want to produce that as part of, a preprint, for example, that people can read, right? That people you can share it, IR. If your IR recognize that preprint as part of a research output. But the problem with our system here, I can safely say that for Indonesia and Malaysia, we don't recognize preprints, isn't it? We only recognize published publication in journals, in peer-reviewed journals. So these publications in peer-reviewed journals, they are the king. Huh? They are the king. Okay, so you can always communicate your research findings to a particular audience. All right. So in the form of that, maybe to the general public, make it more like like a report, or maybe a seminar like this, for example, where you can actually disseminate your research, not only in a form of journal publication. So one way is doing it through preprints. And if some journals might be interested in your preprint, okay, definitely they will try to publish it in a more, overlay journal, for example. So it depends on the intention of you to publish that work. Yeah, okay. If the intention is to get more publication to fulfill your KPI, for example, you have to publish 3. Oh, I need to publish 3 this year. I publish, okay, so I have to slice, all right, from your main study. Then that is not good. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Abriza. I think that was the last question for today's session, because the limited time we have. Sorry for the remaining question. We apologize. Unfortunately, we can answer all of your questions today. So that's all for the Q&A session. And finally, in the final 5 minutes, I would like to ask our speakers to give their final thought about this webinar. Maybe I will start with Professor Abriza and then Dr. Rahmi and Dr. Alvira. Okay, for the first closing statement, I invite again Professor Abriza to give your final notes about this seminar.
Thank you very much, Bapak Hanif. Okay, first of all, congratulations to Universitas Indonesia Library for organizing this. I have not seen this topic being presented or being discussed in Malaysia. For now, I have not. All right, and even when we invite people from Elsevier, for example, I mean, this topic has not been discussed. Elvira. All right, one thing that I would like to just emphasize here is that, okay, although this is an unacceptable practices to the extent that people say that salami slicing is unethical, all right, but there is still an ethical dilemma. This is still a gray area. Some aspect of it you can actually do it, but you need to be fully aware, okay, how you can actually tackle the issues of salami. All right, you have to be very transparent, all right, very open when you communicate to the journal editors. Yeah, and the journal editor will also need to to be well informed also about studies that are worth to be published, but try to, especially when it comes from emerging countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, where, sometimes there are avenues for us to publish, all right, but it's just that in various cases, the reviewers are not fully trained, in fact, the researchers sometimes are not ignorant about this. So it can be unintentional, but it can be fixed. So it is not really a broken system, I would say, through Salami Publishing. We are not broken in that manner. Okay, it is sometimes we still have to understand the fundamental behind it, and it is something that can be further improved with the right, awareness and knowledge sharing session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Abriza. And then for the next, please welcome again Dr. Rahmi for your closing statement.
My closing statement is very short, but I think for me as the early career researcher and educator, the pressure to publish was also linked to the poor quality research and questionable research practices. So there's one paper state that the early career scientists today publish as the first authors roughly one paper less than their colleague in the 1950s. So there is incline, I think, for the paper publications as the first author as the early career scientist. And for me as the aspiring researchers and also for others out there, they are under constant pressure to the system, to the seniors, the increase, the number of the publications and the temptations to divide one set of data into several publications is perfectly understandable. So salami slicing, however tempting, but is also considered harmful to knowledge creations. And researcher, although it's in a junior state or also in the senior state, in the development of the research projects, should plan research publication strategy carefully, identify the appropriate journals for submissions, as well as the authorship and order of authorship as the part of the research planning. I think that's it for the closing statement. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rahmi. And for the last, please, Dr. Alvira, please give us your closing statement about salami slicing and about the seminar.
Thank you. So regarding what we can do as editors of content is very aware that we must keep high standards of quality of publication. And that means ensuring that that we not only promote these types of webinars, that we support the initiatives that universities and hospitals have when they want to promote good practices. I think that's something that we need to follow, we need to do from our hearts, because if we want good publications in Elsevier journals, we want to promote it also and to support you with this. So this is one mission that we have, is improving and helping you improve in your good practices. The second would be that know the impact that your research is going to have, or think about where you want to be in that scientific landscape. That your research might end up in being very important or being very harmful. So always think about the consequences of your acts, where that the pressure is high, where in doubt, ask. But think about that you might be doing a lot of good everywhere. So having impactful research is important for everyone. We need it. We don't need minute publications. We need good international collaborations to change the way healthcare, or in general, knowledge flows. So those two are my closing remarks.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Alfira. Thank you again for Dr. Rahmi and Professor Abriza for your closing statement. All right, everyone, let's give applause to our speakers by giving a reaction on your YouTube menu. Okay, with the closing statement from our speakers, we have reached the end of our session now. On behalf of the webinar committee, I would like to thank Professor Abriza Binti Abdullah, Dr. Rahmi, and Dr. Jimena Alfira for sharing your knowledge, expertise, and experience with us. It was a very rich and fruitful session for us and very informative. And also thank you for coming to Universitas Indonesia, even though it's only done virtually. Hopefully we can have the opportunity to build better networking and collaboration with all of you in the future. All right, now we are moving to the next session, the giving of virtual certificate for our speakers as a token of appreciation from Universitas Indonesia Library. I invite Mrs. Maria to give virtual certificate to the speakers.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hanif. First and foremost, I would like to express my appreciation to the speakers and panelists for their valuable contribution to our international webinar today. My deepest gratitude goes to all who attended the webinar and helped to make it such a successful event. Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Abriza, for your invaluable contribution being the speaker of UI Library International Webinar today. We hope you are healthy and have more success in the future.
Thank you, Ibu Maria.
Yeah, you are welcome, Prof. Okay.
All right, thank you, Ibu Maria. The next is for Dr. Rahmi.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Rahmi, PSD, for your invaluable contribution being the speaker of UI Library International Webinar today. Your presentation give us inspiration and we hope we can implement it in our library.
Thank you very much, Ibu Maria.
Okay, you're welcome, Ms. Rahmi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rahmi and Ibu Maria. And the next for Dr. Jimena Alfira, please, Ibu Maria.
Okay, Mr. Hanif. Hola, buenos dias, Miss Alfira. Good morning.
Hola.
Okay, it's been an honor to meet you and thank you for your invaluable contribution being the speaker of our international webinar today. We hope our library can collaborate more in the future. Thank you very much, Miss Alfira.
Thank you, Miss Maria.
Okay, you are welcome.
Thank you, Miss Maria and all of the speakers. Okay, next we are moving to quiz session. As I mentioned earlier, that today we have 5 souvenirs for quiz and 3 souvenirs for selected Q&A participants. Before it, I would like to remind all of the participants to fill out the attendance list. You can click the link on the chat box to fill out the attendance form. The link can only be accessed until 3 p.m. Jakarta time, and webinar materials and e-certificate will be sent by email. Okay, for the quiz session, I will invite Ms. Nurintan to guide our quiz session today. Let's start, Ms. Nurintan.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hanif. Did my voice clear?
Yes, very clear.
Thank you. Hello, have a wonderful day, everyone. My name is Nurintan, and I am welcoming all of you in the quiz session of UI Library webinar series. Now, I would like invite all participants to join this quiz, and I apologize for all speakers, moderator, and also committee who are strictly prohibited to join this quiz. And for participants who already received a gift delivery from us, for the previous webinars session, we are strongly recommended you to not join this quiz because we want to give opportunity for the other participants to get souvenirs from us. Thank you. Wow, it's already a lot of people who joined this quiz. So just type joinmyquiz.com in your browser and then enter a game code 278343 and then type your name. So we will show 8 questions and then you just choose one correct answer among 4 answers that we already selected. Okay, it's still around 20 people. We are waiting until 12:23. Probably around 100 people will be joining this quiz. I will repeat, just type joinmyquiz.com and then enter game code 278343. For the speakers, moderator, and committees, strictly prohibited to join this quiz, and also participants who already being the winner on the previous 8 webinars. Also, we strongly recommended you to not join this quiz again because we will give opportunity to other participants to join this quiz. Okay, I will be waiting for another 30 seconds. For those who haven't joined, please join this quiz. Okay, because the time is now 12:23, I will start the quiz. And we will start in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, the first question, who is ultimately responsible for preventing salami slicing in research? Well, it's easy question because all of the speakers already explained about it. Now, the second question. Okay, and we will see the leaderboard. The first is Patrick Lapian. For those who haven't achieved 5 highest score, there are still a lot of questions, so be prepared. Okay, that was what does ORI stand for? Okay, this is the third question. Which one is not unacceptable behaviors of salami slicing? So Professor Abriza, Dr. Rahmi, and also Dr. Jimena already give explanation about salami slicing. So it's gonna be easy for us to answer all of this question. Okay, let's move to the fourth question. Okay, it's another acronym. It's another question about what does TOP stand for. Okay, we're gonna see the leaderboard. Okay, there's a fluctuative. The first one is Edi Rusadi and then Nina and Alvina. We're going to the next question. Please be prepared to choose the correct answer. Okay, what are 2 common types of research misconduct? So it's easy, right? Okay, and Miss Elvina now is the highest. Okay, this is our sixth question. This is from Dr. Rahmi's presentation. And okay, there are new people who's coming to the fifth highest score. Okay, these are two questions left. Libraries as the gatekeeper function has three roles, and there are, what is the three roles of the libraries as the gatekeeper? 3, 2, 1. Okay, time's up. Now this is the last question. So for you who hasn't achieved Big Five, you can still try in the last question. This is the last question. Okay, how to avoid any form of research misconduct? So this is the last question. Okay, this is the end of the quiz session, and we all have reached the session. And thank you for all who participating in this quiz. And we will see the podium, the big three, or the three people who has the highest score. Congratulations for Miss Susi Marlina, Mr. Suryadi, and Miss Nina. But we are going to see the fourth and fifth winner because we are prepared 5 souvenirs. Miss Elvina and Mr. Kristiarso from UIN. Congratulations. Okay, don't forget to give us information about your name, your complete address, email, and phone number for souvenirs delivery. That the committee will be provided the number of the committee for the 5 winners. And hopefully we will meet again on the next webinars, on the next quiz session. And good day, everyone. I will return to the session for moderator, Mr. Hanif. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Nurintan. That was a very fun quiz. Congratulations again for the winner. Okay, I will also like to announce 3 selected Q&A participants who will get the prize from UI Library. Please, committee, show the slide. All right, we have 5 winners for the quiz session earlier. The winner for quiz session is Nina, Suryadi, Susi Marlina, Elvina, and Kristiarso from UIN. And also we have 3 selected Q&A participants. Kartika Citra from Faculty of Pharmacy, Universitas Indonesia, and Suryadi from Makassar, and Prasetyo Yuwinanto from Surabaya. Once again, congratulations for all the winner. For the winner, please contact webinars committee, Ms. Nurintan at 628-965-207-6802 via WhatsApp, and please send us information about your name, your phone number, email, and a complete address for the gift delivery. And once again, I would like to remind you again to fill out the attendance form shown on the screen. The committee will also write down the attendance link on the chat box. The attendance links can only be accessed until 3 p.m. Jakarta time. And also materials and a certificate will be sent by email maximum 3 days after the webinar. All right, ladies and gentlemen, finally we have come to the last agenda of this webinar, the photo session. I will give the session to Mr. Hanafi. You may lead the photo session, Mr. Hanafi.
Okay. Photo session, I will start. 1, 2, 3. Next. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hanafi, and thank you for all who support and participate in this event today. So this is the end of our event today. I hope our event is very beneficial for all of us. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact us via email at pro.lib@ui.ac.id. All right. On behalf of Universitas Indonesia Library, we would like to say thank you for your active participation today. And also thank you for all the speakers and committee. I am Hanifin Namullah signing off and say sorry if any mistakes happen during this event. See you at another webinar. Good afternoon, everyone. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Miss Simena.